Welcome to the channel. This is Reliable Rudy. Before we go into any trading analysis, any of the stock market news, you guys know I'm not a licensed financial advisor. Everything in this live stream is me simply just sharing my opinion and trying to give you guys some entertainment, trying to make some money in the process, doing what I love to do. I love working the stock market every single day, and you know, uh, it can be very frustrating sometimes, especially doing it every day. Some people look at it like it's play. Some people look at it like, oh, this is really fun. I enjoy doing it a lot, but at this point in time, when you do something every single day, it doesn't feel as much like play. It feels more like work. So that's the way that I treat it, and I try to take it as serious as possible. But at the end of the day, I'm not perfect, and I'm not going to be perfect. But I have a trading and investing strategy that works for me. Both of those are different. Trading and investing is different. And I try to mix a little bit of both in when I'm live streaming. But, at the end of the day, some of the more entertainment stuff is from the trading. As of late, we haven't really seen anything. But today, now that we've gotten past that intro, we do have an entry in on GS. And before, all we had this 120 sort of neckline. It was showing that candle. We got that first fill off 122s, caught a pop. We tried getting some more. We got 122s and we got 124s. So we got three fills, averaged up twice. NKLA, uh, yesterday we tried the 126 gap. We got 124s, we got 120s. We're on the bid at 116s. There was a lot of size on the ask. This whole sideways consolidation moved to the just sideways for like 2 hours straight. Finally gives us that pop. We took that 116 order off, and we went to work somewhere around that 125, consolidates, and now starting to catch a bid, starting to show that volume increase. The big part that I like is when it takes out this high from yesterday. It is those kind of a flat bottom break over here. Boom, flat bottom break, reject, reject. But when we take out this high on this candle, this volume exceeds all this volume over here, which is, honestly a typical setup that I like. So very interesting setup here on NKLA. Is it going to be able to hold these 130s? Maybe it needs to come back in down to these 120s. We didn't have any fills. We were going to be thinking about it off of this low, which kind of rejects it, which is called a 150 test. But some wick tops coming in. Is this enough selling pressure for it to pull back into these 120s? Maybe it is. It's kind of setting up that way. Like this is going to be pullback candle number one. But still a lot of volume on this candle. 5 minutes left. This could easily wick up. If this turns into a green candle and this volume gets a little bit closer to that upside, we could see some continuation. So that's really what I'm rooting for. Devon, oil was significantly, it was holding those 80s. It was trying to hold those 80s early. Devon, we did have some fills in Devon yesterday. We tried this 49.25 consolidation after the stream, and we had orders in off of 49.20, I believe, and then 49.10 and also 49.05. So we took three fills on Devon, and those fills filled us after we'd left and went to work. So we just felt like if those orders would have filled, we would have been good. Well, it kind of gave up the ghost. So had I been here, I don't know if I would have bought this red kind of breakdown right here. But I do like the setup for this uptrend, kind of flirting around that middle ground. You guys know what I say about the middle ground is I think the big players are around there, short and long. So this could easily set up short today, giving the gap fill from the gap down on Tuesday to Wednesday, kind of retraced up. Now trading underneath that. I wouldn't be surprised if this had to trade back into the 48s. But Devon is the oil play I've been trying. I just feel like compared to a lot of other oil, like these names are tested up towards these lows, tested up towards these gaps, and for this to be setting up this trend line like it is, I just and also increasing oil production, I just look at it as like, okay, this is a trend line worth trying to build a position off of. By no means is it a perfectly built position so far, but if we do get this neckline break at a 51, give or take, I would look at this as a confirmed higher low, but I gotta see that 51 break. So. That is Devon. That should be a title name as well. I'm not sure why that's not a title name because But oh well, I'm not going to worry about it. But Devon is definitely one that I am not opposed to buying more if it gets into those 48s. And if it starts putting wicks right into this trend line, it has built decent support off these 48.50s. And I would say that's pretty much right in with that trend line. So 48.50, I am going to be a buyer, and I understand that I would be buying for a potential flat bottom break where you could see a break of that trend line. And I would say 47 support. That gap's filled. That gap's filled. We could be seeing a test of these lows, and after that, you actually could be seeing the next gap that we have. You know, you do have some 45 support and wick lows into this area in these low 40s, but I'd say $38 gap is reasonable. So keep that in mind that there is a downside risk in these when you're playing these trend lines, and a lot of times they come in quick. I can show many examples of trend line breaks, and it is not pretty, and sometimes it sucks. Uh, but we feel we have enough conviction to try and play this trend line for a long, and if it works out for us, you know, maybe we can start some trims off this 53 half right in front of this 53.63 gap, and we'll see from there. But looking at some other names, BAC. Well, I just wanted to quickly look over at this GNS. It's got a minute and a half left. The volume leaving a nice buying wick candle, and the volume also increasing. So we got a minute and 20 seconds left. If this candle does turn green, we could see a nice pump here at the end of this candle where it starts it, and then when the candle closes, you could see this next candle keep showing that continuation. So I would love for this candle to turn green. I don't want this last minute for it to turn and get back underneath 130. That would kind of give me the feel like, okay, let's test back into these lower 120s, maybe a 125 hold. But we'll watch this last minute here and see how it goes. So a couple different ways. Just by a minute of trading, you can tell a lot based off the close of a candle on a 15-minute, in my opinion. You know, I know not many people, not everyone uses a 15-minute chart. There's all kinds of different ways to go, but I hold a lot of regard for these 15-minute candles. And you know, if I was looking at a bull move for a potential bull flag, I'm very focused on 3 increased volume candles and 3 green candle moves to the upside. Where if this is the move, it closes green. We have 15 seconds for this to really get going. I don't know if it's going to, but you do see the wick of buying pressure, so a good battle taking place. We like the entry we have. We haven't had any trims yet. But I do like how the price is trying to hold over top of this neckline. So we do get a close kind of even. So we closed the previous candle at 132, and we close this candle at 132. So kind of just an even sort of range on that candle. You know, does it need to pull back in, or can it get going? This is going to be interesting to watch. Mr. Drift, how we doing, brother? Good to have you here on the stream. Uh, yeah, in terms of other title names, Disney is a wait and see. You know, once you see something give up support like this, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to see it retrace up to those 85s, but I would expect some rejection. A nice red candle on increased volume. Uh, I would want to see this bear flag start to get discredited. And what I mean by discredited is I want to see large volume. So if I was looking at this as a pull for a bear flag, I'd be focused on 1, 2, 3 next candles, and I'd be looking for it to give this frowny face, and I'd want to see light volume on this pull back into this area. A lot of people trying to stay away from it, kind of like and GNS, excuse me, GNS getting back into those 120s. So by no means is this out of the clear yet. I would expect maybe a retrace back into these low 20s. This candle could have been the tell for that. But I would like to see this candle. We have 13 minutes left, so a lot of time. But I'd like to see this candle show me a wick. And you know, maybe I'm crazy for not getting any trims up here in these 35s. If we have a 122 average, you know, that was a really nice move. 10% move into that range. So maybe I'm crazy for not taking any trims, but I really think that this is setting up decent. And if it does want to get going, some level, and you guys can see here on this daily, you can see the sideways consolidation. So there's your move, 1 2 3 candles, your fourth candle gaps down, but gives you those buyers. You see that volume increase, and then setting up the flat top. So it doesn't really test up to this 150 too much. But if this starts building that sort of U shape right here, honestly, I would say that this is a pretty decent setup. If it wanted to break those 150s, we could be seeing uh, this is something that, okay, we can trim some levels to the upside today, hold a piece for the dream. If this does want to take out the 175 highs, I would just mark out these previous lows. I'd say this is probably a flat bottom break, pulls right back in, sort of to the middle of this move, not quite the middle, but catches a bid, hold, 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 hold. You can see the flat bottom break. It tries to reclaim, but gets hard rejected. Now it's sort of wicking up towards that level. I'd say a two flat level is reasonable. But GNS still gonna have to work out some levels. By no means is this a drop in the bucket. There was a lot of red volume here, even though it has that wick of buying. I would say that it still is a large increase in red volume, so that is something to monitor. Nikola 135s. Uh, it was able to leave that green candle, so I do like that setup. I would expect pretty decent support off those 130s and just simply the high from yesterday from the move. But it does have, I wouldn't say the greatest flat bottom break. And if we look at the daily, you can kind of see that. It looks like a short, but it gives you the look like, okay, here's your pull for a bear flag. We're gonna see 1 2 3, so you can see it wicking up towards this area. If it gets closer to that 150, we actually could think about just exiting and taking a win. But actually mapping out this sort of flat top break that we took the original trade, if it gets up there and starts to reject and gives that curl down, we could be seeing another leg down. So I'm not saying that nickel looks perfect. We just said that, hey, we took this 150 entry, we had outs above threes, and we held a piece, a small piece, all the ways back in. And to reload this off of some of these gap fills, here's your 125. It never got down the 116 gap, but it was very close. We felt like this is the range where we wanted the reload. So catching a nice bid today, but honestly, I would say the short looks good for this name up here around this 145 to 150. So we could think about just exiting this position if it gets there. We did get some. If it got down to that 116, we actually probably would have had more size than we originally had on that 150 break. So maybe I'm a little crazy for not trimming this name as well. But looking at the 15-minute, I think it could pass the rules for, we're breaking over top of these highs. We confirmed a higher low. Could be a trend line that's able to hold here. So we're going to give it a chance. And if we get up to those 145s and 150s, we are going to be trimming this name. Probably more aggressive than what I normally would. Looking at end phase, we did have some orders get triggered, and we went to work somewhere around this area, and we got a 122.25 fill that we put out there. We said, hey, if it gets below this wick, we're looking for a washout bottom and trade back up. Today, I would love to sit here and say, yeah, we got some fills on this name today, but we don't. But I am not opposed of when we do have this alert here at 120.50 for a breakdown. We are going to be playing 120 flat, and we are going to be playing if we just oops, let's get that back there. Let's go back to a daily. We are going to be playing this nice green candle bottom. We are going to be playing these wick lows. Every one of these red lines I have planned out, we are going to be buying each one of them. It's against strength, but I look at this name as a undervalued asset, and I'm going to be playing it against strength. Yesterday's red candle coming on in. We did have a buy yesterday as well, early in the day around 120, 26.25, I believe it was. Maybe no, it was 34s, 126 34s, and at the time, looking back, it's easy to say, dude, what are you doing buying? I was really expecting some sort of wick to come in towards those 125s. But we were extremely patient on the name. Uh, we hadn't really averaged any shares into the name since the earnings report, and we had around a 166 average. We were able to drop that average down into the 130s. Now with the ad yesterday, we are now sitting at 134 average. So yes, it's in the red. Yes, percentage wise, it still isn't the greatest look, but this is a long term name that I'm very focused on, and one that I'm not going to let uh, get away from me. I think 5 year outlook, I would not be surprised to see a retest of these highs over the next 5 years, and that type of return off of these lows is a significant return, and I would probably be very bullish even if it was up here with this name. Of course, I'd be crazy not to trim. On the way up, if that move came in, but end phase, if it were to get down into these low hundreds, oh man, it is going to be a very exciting name, and honestly, long term, it would probably be best if my position kept turning into the red down to these hundreds. But this support, I look at this support over here. It doesn't have much action. Obviously, we have a large move to the upside and a sideways consolidation. Uh, I think the bottom end of this range is a reasonable long to think of if you're looking at an investment and not a trade. That is where I'm differing from investing and trading. But we'll go back to GNS. It's still trying to hold these 130s. That's leaving an all right wick. This wick getting as low as 126, so kind of a test of that 125 area. Okay, we're going to be patient with this name. We have 6 minutes left. Volume is starting to decrease, but still showing me that wick of buying. So as long as this candle doesn't close as a full red engulfing candle, I like this setup. This is a setup that I trade. You try to take that early entry off that neckline break. We got some entries down here, and everything's in the money right now. That doesn't mean that 30 minutes to an hour from now, this doesn't discredit everything that I'm talking about. So not a sure thing, but I do think it's a reasonable setup. Mm. NVAX, yesterday we talked a lot about this 807 gap. It kind of has a washout bottom through those eights. But if this low wants to give out, I am expecting the neckline. We didn't buy this 8 gap, but you can see it here on the daily chart. Here is your increased volume. Here's your positive break, a pull right back into that gap. And now it's trying to hold this area. If this ends up turning into a U shape and starts catching some size, I might look for a smaller candle to hold this level. And maybe it wicks underneath yesterday's low, but I'd want to see it try to hold 8 today, and then coming back to this Monday, for next week, if it holds 8 and opens above 8, I would start looking at the high of today as a potential sort of neckline break, but still expecting some selling pressure in the middle of this red move. Uh, you're gonna have, but the end catalyst for this name is that I want the same buyers that were here on this green move to show up in the middle of it and show up at that neckline. So from where our entry is at, we had plenty of fills. So if we do get exhaustive down to the tops of these wicks, call it a 760 to 750, we are going to hit some reloads on this name, and that is where a lot of the damage can be done. Yes, I held 60% of the position from 950s all the ways back into 8. Looking back, yep, I should have cut everything. Uh, but with this type of setup on a nice positive break on increased volume, I wouldn't have been surprised to see a test up to 10. Had it got up to 10, that's where I talked about I would have some more aggressive cuts on the name. But obviously, in hindsight, there's always a better way that you can play it. It's about being consistent and staying true to how you want to play the position. There's no perfect way to do it. We even had outs on this first day up to those seven. In those 775s, and looking back, it's like, dude, that was a neckline break. Why are you selling it? You could have just been patient and had more trims higher. Well, even on the following day, our first fill on that second rip of the day was an 870, and it's just like, dude, you're breaking over the highs from the initial kind of move. What are you doing? It's like, it's all right. We were cutting small, and as we were just trimming the levels to the upside, and now when it pulls back in, we could think about a reload. So That is the take for Invax. Warner Brothers kind of giving up the ghost. I would say it is still a title name. We didn't buy any today, but I am probably going to keep holding this. I didn't have the most size on the position. Compared to some, you could say that it is all right size. But I would really like to see this start wicking into these 25s and catch a bid. It's gonna have to fight through those 1250s, but it is discrediting this trend line. There's probably a couple different ways you could set it, but this is only 2 points of contact. I do like this support here. I can maybe think about some outs in front of 12 or maybe this low at 1150. But this could end up turning into more of a long position for me. Um, is what it is. I thought the setup was really good. It had consecutive higher lows in that trend line, and when it was able to break this wedge pattern, maybe I had a little bit too much bias on it and saying that it broke the downtrend. Let's start holding this uptrend, and we'll go from there. But maybe just needs a little bit more time to play itself out. I do think that the long for Warner Brothers, I didn't mind the earnings report. It shows GAAP EPS of -50, but it did have a $1.6 billion write-off that was involved with that. The free cash flow was a significant increase year over year. Close to that 2 billion in free cash flow, and they are continuing to lower that debt level that from the spinoff of AT&T. So it checked a lot of boxes for me in the earnings report, and I really liked it. And we were really patient. We didn't buy it on the earnings day. We didn't buy it during this move. We waited for the retest of that neckline. 13 flat was that first entry. A few entries around 12, and a few entries as we thought. This could discredit this bear flag. It is what it is. And kind of maybe that space is just a bad space. You look at Warner Brothers is in that same space as Disney. I didn't play Disney perfect as well. We were trying this 85 support level. We thought it was a monster level. It is what it is. But GM, I am more excited about this GM. We are going to be playing this trend line. But I just kind of looked at it and seeing that it was at 32.50. We have two fills on the name. The first entry comes in on I believe it was this day. It gives a nice move to the upside, and then it was trading around these 32.90s. That is where our first fill is. And then the following day, we didn't buy the gap, but we respected the 33 flat. We didn't see it get up to this sell window up here, 34 to 33.80s. But it's all right. I am going to be buying this name down in these low 32s, and we'll see where it goes from there. Other names, we got Bank of America. Bank of America giving up 28.50s. I didn't buy 28.50s yesterday, but we did buy 28.50s over here, and we also bought the 28.28 gap, and we were on the bid for a good till cancel order off 28.08 gap. Kind of giving up the trend line from yesterday. It tried to give a relief rally into the end of the day, but now kind of giving up the ghost there. Looking at the daily chart, we can see how this trend line is really playing out. We're playing this like a trend line. So all in all, if it was setting up kind of like how these others are, it's going to break this trend line. And we're going to see 28.07 come on in, 28.08, and we'll see if that can fill us. And we'll also probably be playing 28 flat. 28 flat, not a decisive level that you can see right here, but there was all kinds of action every time it was trading around that 28 flat, and we're gonna keep playing it as a support level. If it wants to break down, some of these support levels in 26 to 27 is probably there. But if it gives up the ghost, I would say you have a neckline here underneath 26, you have a neckline here at 25s, and you have a gap fill here at 24.40s. So those are all going to be respected, and I think long term, Bank of America continuing to buy back shares, continuing to increase that dividend, continuing to increase that EPS and revenue. We look at it as a legitimate long-term buy, and that is why we're playing this as a support level, as a trend line buy. So is it going to pan out for me? Maybe not in the short term, but looking into the future, I think this is going to be something that we make a good amount of money on, and I'm very excited to see it getting beaten down. I like when I see long-term names that I like, that I'm interested in holding long-term, get beaten down. And, it sucks, and that's part of investing is so you're not going to buy the bottom. That's one thing you're going to have to realize when you're investing is you're not going to buy the bottom. But if you believe in your conviction for a company, there's never you can't be too early, you can't be too late. That's what a wise man once told me, and I've seen it firsthand play out that way. That you can't be too early. If it's a good, fundamentally sound company, it will pan out for you. You just got to give it time, and that's how we're playing Bank of America. PayPal, I want to see PayPal. I'm excited to see this starting to reject that area. But if this is a pull for a bull flag, we are out of that oversold area. Pullback candle number 3. There is a sneaky gap right here, just right at that 59.50. If this candle wants to kind of trade further down into here, I think we are going to test the waters on a false break of that 60. And if it fills that 59.50, we are going to be buying some PayPal. Uh, and honestly, I don't think this is the low for PayPal either. We have good till cancel orders off 56 and 55.50 with all sorts of gaps and levels below that. You can see here is your 55 flat is sort of this flat top right here. It has a gap fill which meets in with some support as well, and that is at 55.75, and it also has a gap here around those 54s. We're going to be buying PayPal if it gets down to those mid 50s. It's just another name that I like for the long term, and we'll see how it plays out. Uh, you know, you never know. But Enphase catching a little bit of some relief. I was expecting some continuation to the downside, but kind of like Disney gives up the ghost on a large red candle. Is it going to turn into a bear flag that turns further down? So probably not going to be buying any Enphase today. But we did have a very nice fill yesterday in those 122s. Uh, but we also bought 126s, so I'm not going to make it sound like I'm perfect. But we are going to keep respecting this if it wants to keep this knife to the downside. And we'll see where it goes. You never know. DFS, given that same look, rejecting the wick low from the initial move down, it wasn't able to close above that wick. It has a little bit of wick of, I would look at this, if this was flipped upside down, and I gotta look back at GNS, but if this was flipped back upside down, I would look at this candle, or the low from yesterday, as sort of a neckline. Well, now it's to the downside. So I would say, DFS probably going to give that continuation to the downside. But it does have a sneaky gap at 87.28. We can think about orders there, and if it gives up that gap fill, low 80s is probably going to come into play. But looking back at GNS, leaving that wick, 126 light volume. We have 10 minutes left. 125s is a decent area. We can think about maybe one more order. But let's go start looking at the tape for this name. Wow, was it really that long since I had my portfolio up? Let's log back into that. Another notable name, Geo. The longer it trades around here, kind of discrediting this 15-minute trend line that we had over this week. But you can see the support at 7, given the look like, hey, this is going to be a flat bottom break. If it can start turning green, I would say a 730 break would be a neckline. And GNS down here to these 125, so not in the clear yet, but this is candle number 3. If it can wick into 25s, even into this range, I'd say you have good support down to 120s. It's below your 34, and I would still say that you could see this start to build some sort of U-shape. There's a lot of time left in this candle. If it can hold 125s, I'd say this is a decent setup for a continuation, but we got to see the 125s hold first. So, bid stacked on the 125s. It's trying to. Let's maybe think about adding some size if this gets down to those 122s. That's probably right around the average for the name, so we'll see. 122 would mean a decisive move down below those 125s. Buyers are stacked on the 126 right now, so uh, buyers are, you can see that wick starting. So if it can hold these 25s, the wick low here is 23s. It gets, oh, nope, 24s was the wick low. And then looking over at NKLA, kind of the same look. Is it going to be able to hold this previous high at those 130s? We think it's possible. This first red candle is a red engulfing candle through that third candle, but the volume does decrease. Very light volume on this candle as well. So, uh, I would expect some selling pressure in the middle of this red move. It's a nice red candle on that 15 minute. If that is a catalyst to push it down, maybe some wicks into those upper 20s seems reasonable, but we'll see how that goes. GNS, I didn't even notice, up to 129. So yeah, that would have been, I had the order to up some size on the name. Um, we'll see if this can take out the highs or not, but now that we've kind of went through all the title names and I went through my spiel, I can't really say that word. Warner Bros. Right into these 125s. Is it going to be able to hold 125s? You can see the support crack of that 1250s. We are going to, you know, keep an eye on this, but we do think that it's a reasonable area around those 1225, so we'll see if that ends up holding. The other name I do got to keep an eye on is GM, so let's just go ahead and put an alert in out those 3235s. I'd expect that to trigger. Oh, what do we got active here? We can take this one off. We can take NKLA off. We'll keep an eye on that one, and let's just go get that alert in. If that triggers, we can maybe start putting some orders in off 3225s and see where it goes from there. GNS right back into this 125 level. Let's see if we have any size. We do have all right size, so let's just try and average up a little bit on this name, and we'll see if this has any weight. So we probably got 126s there, but we tried to get, yep, we got 126s. So we have 120s, 122s, 124s, and 126s. So that probably puts us at an even 123 for our average. We'll see if this has any weight to the upside. I'm not opposed to adding more in the lower 120s if it can hold, and then we'll think about stops if it can get on. If it gets underneath this neckline, you do have this body candle, and I would say the size is all right. I'm not going to say it's a huge size, but uh, it is a reasonable position at this point. But I like the setup for it. It's 5 minutes left. It's showing another candle, which it does have a lot of selling pressure coming in here. But if it pans out, anybody that's short in this red move, if it takes out this high, that is where you could see those exhaustive moves to the upside. And if I am looking at it as a retracement, you can see we get into those final retracements right here. uh, you probably have some sort of trend line. So if it does crack this trend line, I would expect it to give you an exhaustive move to the downside. Where if this is wave number 2, your wave number 3 cracking this trend line could bring you down even below these lows. You could see just a little test of this low and then a hard rejection. I wouldn't be surprised to see this retest down to these 50s if this goes south. So not a typical setup that I like to take. When I see a clear rejection of that 702, it is very scary. It's very scary. But if we get a retest of those 702s, that's 150s. That is where we're looking for this name to move, where we can start trimming the name. So we'll see. We'll see. End phase. Kind of breaking that little flat top. It was setting up this flat top. Well, now actually holding above these 123s. I would say I really like the setup. I very tempted to buy, but we're just gonna hold off on that. Uh, Even though it's very tempting, even though I like the setup, even though I like the name long term, I do think that I can get this name cheaper. So maybe a touch of greed is coming in. But I do like the setup that it has on the day. After an exhaustive move down, I still think that if it got up back up to those upper 120s, it would probably look more like a short. You have a downtrend that it hasn't been able to break. That could eventually just slow churn to the upside, and then boom, hard reject. Um, but GNS. Continuing the wick into those 125s, so I do like the setup. We tried getting 125s there. We could have just had the order there, but we got 126s. So it's 1 penny. I wasn't gonna be tight for 1 penny, but we did want to try and get an ad and play this like it's going to be a bull flag. If we're right about this one, we can get a high break of these 135s, and I think it looks decent. Hibbett, how many times we talked about Hibbett? I can't remember who was in here talking about Dick's Sporting Goods. We said, Dick's, I'm sure long term you're going to do all right. It's just a weak name. If we go look over at Dick's, I'm keeping an eye on these two names over here. I'm not forgetting about them. A nice move. GM crossing over already, so maybe we can think about getting an order. A couple orders will start at 32.25, 32.15, maybe 32.10, and then 32 flat. We are going to be starting to build that position. Still very small size on that name. It has been a title name multiple times. We've been waiting for this kind of exhaustive sell-off to the downside. I wish I could say the same for Warner Bros. But it is still at this support. Red engulfing, it probably has more downside. So we're just gonna pump the brakes on that name. But GM, we are not gonna be so easy on GM. Those 32.25s I think is also a support range in there. Now below 32s. So let's go ahead and get an order on GM and average some shares in off 25s. So if that fills, we will uh, uh, get a fill. If that gets to 25s, we are on the bid, and I'm gonna go switch over just a second. I'm still keeping an eye on those other names. I don't want them to just give me a flush. We have 1 minute left to do what we're trying to do here. SPGC, we did have our eyes on that for some continuation. It is catching a little bit of a bid. Let's go take a look at GNS, the tape on GNS. We are coming in. That is the close of this candle. So now, it's anybody's ball game from this moment on. When this fourth candle opens, I do like that it has that wick of pressure right there. Each one of these pullback candles, still seems like a lot of red volume, but that is candle number 3. Each one leaving a wick, each one holding the candle before. So setting an open price above this wick, it doesn't seem like much, but I will take it as it does have a little bit of pressure. It's probably worth taking a look at the SQ, the short on the Nasdaq as well. Taking out the highs, very, we talked about it. We were on top of this from when it started tapping that downtrend on that fourth candle of the day. We said, hey, that Nasdaq short is really catching some steam. Uh, but a nice, 1, 2, 3 sets the flat top. 1, 2, 3 breaks the flat top. One consolidation takes out the high. 1, 2, 3 pulls back into that same level. We said 1950. Look at that, 1955 low. And now, boom, catching a bid, taking out yesterday's high. Nasdaq short. I would say it looks pretty juicy. Looking at oil, that test and trying to hold above those 80s was a good step. Maybe he needs to pull back in. You know, those upper 70s, the catalyst for this name. You go over to that weekly. This is weekly pullback number 2. You see the wick of buying pressure. Kind of the same thing with GNS, how we have our pull. You know, more green pull even off of a weekly. This is 8 consecutive weeks of green move, 7 consecutive weeks of green move. Now pulling back into the middle of that move, those 77s is very good support in my opinion. Looking at the weekly on GNS, nice little pump of volume right here, but there's your catalyst for, you know, a retest back into these lows here at 75. So not and we are going to have to keep this on watch. I'm not opposed to maybe trying to add some, but trying to hold these 25s. We'll see if this can get going here. Trying to hold 25s, 9 lots on 25s. We'll see if it can hold. If it breaks down these 25s right here, I think we're just going to market order. If I see the ask stacking on 25s or maybe even 24s, we are going to try and add one more time. We're going to give this name a chance. If it wants to pan out, we think that we can make a good chunk of change on it. But if we end up getting stopped out, you know, it is what it is. It passed the rules for the setup that we're looking for. If it doesn't pan out, you know, it is what it is. Like I said, if it does pan out, great, man. We're gonna make out pretty good on this name. It's been in the green all day for us, so by no means is it. And we got 111 lots here on 24s, so good size. Trying to jump in the middle of this green move. Not the most amount of size, but good size. We also have 69 lots on 25s for the ask. So, I mean, anybody's ball game. This could go either way. NKLA coming on in as well. This is candle number 3. Light volume on that second candle and continuing on in. You know, we're not opposed to, let's see, did the stat, nope. Chipped away some of those 24 orders though. Chipping away more of those 24 orders, so even more, it's still chipping away orders. So if we see this come on in to these 23s, maybe 22s, we are gonna think about it. We're gonna go in for some right there. More lots stacked on 24s and chipped away some 25s, so we're gonna add to that buying pressure. We probably didn't add too much to that buying pressure, but it was something, and we're gonna give this a chance. We did get 25s there. NKLA starting to leave that wick. That's kind of what we talked about. You know, how does it act if it gets into these upper 120s? GNS, not set in stone that this is going to start working. It just it's chipping away some more 24s. We like the ad right here, but this candle is going to be a big candle for us. And now only 5 lots on 24s. This is giving the look like, hey, we're going to at least chip down into these lower 120s. Let's see if any buying pressure can come in there. 24s are continuing to try to hold, but 55 lots on 25s still has to work through that. I would say your Nasdaq short could be the decider of what is some of these plays panning out. The Nasdaq short, I mean, you guys see it as a strong move for the day. You know, there's a term out there, free fall Friday. You know, if there was going to be a free fall Friday, it would happen after the day like yesterday, where the Nasdaq was down 1% and what was it, down 1%, 1.8%. You know, I would say that what better day to have a free fall Friday than after a 2% red day. Now I'm not going to say there's any legitimacy to that at all, but all I'm saying is that the Nasdaq short is strong, so we are going to be on watch for that. And GM, did it wick us? Yep. We got our GM fill 3225s. We can probably go put that next order in for 3210s, and then we'll play 32 flat. I think it's a reasonable support level, and you guys can see the catalyst for the trend line. Buying the knife is a difficult thing to do. It's a weak name as well. GNS, giving up those 25s again. Does it still have the bid there? It does. So trying to hold these 25s. Is it going to be able to pan out though? If a red candle starts coming on in, we are going to have to think about potentially just cutting the name. Uh, it would be our average is probably right in around this 24s as we've averaged up a couple times. Uh, but we are going to get ready for a red candle move through everything right here. Well, we'll just take the hit on the name. It is what it is. But 7 minutes left on this candle. By no means is this set in stone and over. And maybe since this opened flat are closed flat on this candle, maybe this is actually candle number 3. So it might need one more candle. So we are gonna try and give it this candle if we can, but if it comes down to it, we'll have to cut the name, and that kind of sucks to do. But you can only do so much. And there it just gave up those 24s, so 23s are on the bid. Only 21 lots. Given the feel like, hey, we can give this up. And there's 122s coming on in, so we are getting ready. We have our shares uh, ready for a market cut. And if it comes down to it, we're gonna have to. Let's see if this can start leaving a wick. We have 6 minutes left. If it can leave a wick and close above 125, we like it. If it starts, getting underneath those 120s, it's gonna be harder to hold this name. NKLA leaving a nice wick there. Wick of buying on that increased volume for 6 minutes left could be something, but I'm not going to say NKLA is perfect either. 123s is now holding. Now 124s is holding. We got size 55 lots holding these 24. Now 22 lots. So it's nice to see that little wick of buying pressure. So it's by no means does it mean we're up 2 cents. We're in the clear. No, we still have a lot of levels to work off of, but I do like the setup still. Invex trying to hold 8. Warner Brothers giving up the ghost, giving up the ghost. Probably 12 flat. It looks like we are actually going to give up that level as well. So taking a hit on Warner Brothers, part of the game, part of the game. I do think that Warner Brothers has some potential, but we'll see. I'm more focused on this GNS right now. Slight little volume increase, but still not the most, and leaving that wick top right there. 40 lots on 23s for GNS. 4 minutes left. This candle is showing decreased volume again. So if the green volume can come back in, we're right in the middle of this green move. If we would just mark this out, your half is at 124. Your 618 is at 121. If you wanted to use the green move, that 121. So underneath 120s, I think is potentially a catalyst. Maybe if we wanted to give it, we can give it the body candle. But underneath 118, it's gonna be tough. I'm just gonna say it's gonna be tough. Anybody that's long in this move, you put them with the gun to their head, and they start losing money. It could easily just give you that flush. But we do think it has potential as long as it's in the middle of this green move, and we're gonna give it a chance. We're not gonna paper hand it. I'd say we're right in at our average, give or take, anyways. So uh, it's not like we're in at the tops up here. We got pretty decent entries on this move originally, and we have a couple averages in to the downside. We'll see. We will see. Nasdaq short continuing to pump, absolutely continuing to pump. Looking at the daily, there's your top. It gaps up. It closes higher. 1, 2, 3. Gaps down and boom, gap down right into that 1850 level. Beautiful, beautiful. GNS down to 23s. Let's see if our bid is still there at 23s. It is not. It gave up 23s right there. So we are going to keep this one here on watch. We got 2 minutes, 30 seconds left. Still decreasing volume, but a lot of red volume coming in here. But each candle has left a wick. We'll see if this can leave a wick as well. There's 122s rolling through the tape. It still has those 122 bids. Is it going to be able to hold here? It's 2 minutes left for this to start leaving a wick. I'm sure people are going to be watching this like, man, why aren't you taking any profits up here? You know, oh man, I should have. I wanted to. I was getting ready to start putting some orders in. But I maybe took a little bit too much credit to that neckline as it was putting a green candle above those 130s. Looking back, you know, probably could have. Probably could have. Enphase trying to hold 25s. GM down to 32s. We're going to go get that order in on GM. 32.10. We're going to average some more in on GM. 32.10. GNS back up to those 24s. Just tapped them. Now it gave up those 23s again. NKLA trying to hold 130s. It's tapping some 30s. 20 lots on 22s here. Is this going to be able to hold? Is it going to be able to reclaim 25s again? CRK in. When that first candle puts a candle red engulfing through that first 15-minute candle, just look back at it 2-3 hours from then. Normally it's going to look something like this. I've seen this setup once or twice right there. But I'm not perfect. I mean, obviously, we have some averages above this name where it's at right now. And that should be a close of the candle. We'll see if this has any legitimacy to it or not. If this can start catching a bid from here, we like the name. But if not, you know, we're going to be put in a position where we're thinking about cutting it. PayPal getting close to that 60 level. Warner Brothers all the ways down into 12s. BAC also coming back into those 28, 25s. Nasdaq short is really taking a toll on some of these names. The oil name holding up, that's a good sign, and also a solar energy name holding up for once. You don't get to say that often on the course of 2023. GNS bid stacking on 23s, so a good start to this candle. Couple red engulfing candles, but decreasing volume as well. So let's see it just hold this level right here. We don't want to see any exhaustive moves to the downside. That puts us in a bind if it does. GNS gives us a fill off of 32.10, so let's just go throw an order off of 32s. We're going to keep averaging into that position when necessary, and let's go 32.02s. 32.02s, if that fills, we're gonna keep trying to play the long for this name. Red engulfing right into this level. We like this support level. We like the trend line. There's probably multiple ways that we can set this trend line. I would still say you're probably in GNS up to 24, so a good start to this candle. We'll see if the bid's actually stacked on 24s or not. Let's take a look at that. And the bid is stacked on 24s, 29 lots. I would still expect some selling pressure in the middle of this red move. So if same way I did it to the upside, we can do that to the downside right here. So you can see all these retracements. It's going to have to fight every one of these levels, starting with the 125s, then 127s, 28s, 30s, 31s, 32s. It's going to be a whole battle through this whole thing. But over 125s, this is a good start, and I am very happy to see this candle start coming in. Super light volume, and like I said, I'm expecting some selling pressure in the middle of this. But if it can work out all those levels, maybe catch a bid up to 130s, pull back into 123, 25s is reasonable. But if it can continue holding 25s from there, I'm going to be bullish, and I'm going to be looking for a 135. We will be getting outs in these 130s now that we have these levels here. And if it gets to 135, we're going to keep trimming this name. And if it gets over 135s, we are going to be worried for a washout top candle to come in. So we are going to be trimming at that breakout level. We can hold a piece for the dream, where if you're looking at this as your retracement, 140s. False break of 150s, 170s, 175s for a full extension. If we get those 175s, we'll say we have a 25 average. We're looking at a 42% on this full extension for this bull flag. So if that comes on in, after that, I'm sure we'll be saying, hey, let's trim twos. But a nice candle coming on in. As of right now, full green engulfing candle. This, at some point in time, this candle, mark my words, is going to wick and probably come back in below 125s. It's going to be up for the buyers to say, okay, it showed us this move. Let's go on the bid here at 124s or 125s and keep this hold going. So a decent start to this candle. But by no means is this in the clear. This is going to now 128s. This is going to start wicking. I would be shocked if it didn't start wicking into that level. 21 lots on the bid here. And that is a good learning point for me. Even though this first red candle comes in, I didn't really identify it. I identified it originally, but I didn't really think about it until this candle, where we get a flat close on this candle, where this could be pullback candle number one, pullback candle number two, pullback candle number three, and now showing some resilience and actually some buying pressure coming on in. But you can see the decreasing volume, and the main reason, you could say, well, this candle opens up flat as well. But the big difference here, now keep in mind, I could be just blowing smoke here, but the big difference here is look at how this volume candle still increases, where this is the first candle that actually pulls back in volume. It still leaves that nice wick and closes at 132, but this is where the pullback in volume started. So 1, 2, 3 candles of pullback. Maybe the buyers really just need to see, okay, we're not getting too much selling pressure. There is selling pressure, but not too much. So a good little teaching moment right there. I've said it before, and I've looked at it that way before. But now looking at it, it is good to kind of relive that type of situation right there. And I'm not going to say just because it's up at 129s this is perfect, but I would say that, you know, we are in the money on every fill now. And let's take a look over at NKLA. Kind of in that same story. You get this a couple selling pressure. Now we're getting this move back on into those 125s. All in all, with it setting these highs right here, is it going to be a catalyst for some sort of channel? Maybe, maybe. So maybe a 125 hold is in the cards there. This candle still has a lot light volume, so I'm telling you, before this candle is over, you are going to see this leave that wick for the selling pressure to come in. If somebody got that golden entry, was waiting for this 122s patiently, they are going to be looking to take profits. At some point in time in this candle, you're going to see this wick probably and retest 125s. So, you know, maybe I can go on the ask here and start getting a few trims on the name. We can start with a 1/15th cut off of these 130s, and we can start ringing the register. And if 130s wants to fill, we can reload at least something in off this range. NKLA reclaiming those 130s, decent start. But let's see if we can get this fill on GNS off 130s. Pulling back in, 127s here. And also, as soon as that started kind of catching a bid, this candle on the SQ, given that first red candle, so we could be seeing 1, 2, 3 candles of consolidation to retest this high. We'll start with this high, but then we can also go the body candle, which is your wicks, and also sort of the middle of this red move. So expecting the NASDAQ short to pull back in, maybe we can catch a bid on some of these names. Warner Brothers right at a 12 flat level. And GM, nice candle coming in on GM. Whoo! We put that order in off 32.02s, missing that order by 3 cents. I thought about the 05s. I thought about 05s there. Man! And I'm not going to make it sound like this is a perfect, but I did want to see some buying pressure come in. You know, somewhere in that support range, it was going to come on in. But GM catching some nice volume and still a nice green candle here. I'm expecting some selling pressure in the middle of this red move. So obviously super early on a weak name too. This is a weak name, guys. But you can see that wick pressure coming in. Is this going to be the wick low of the day? I would be surprised if it wasn't. This trend line and this level is a monster level. And you know, I say it like it's set in stone, and we're only like 5 minutes into this wick, but this is a really good level and what we really wanted to see on GM. Warner Brothers, not so much. You know, if this were to catch a bid up to 25s, we can think about maybe just cutting this name. But as of right now, we're just holding the knife on Warner Brothers, which, you know, it sucks to do. It sucks. Oh, buckets. ENPH. Hello. Up to 124s. Showing at least some life. This name hasn't showed life all year. You know, a couple times it does. But it hasn't showed life all year. It's been a knife. I think year to date is 60-something%. The PE as of yesterday was actually trading in the 20s. ENPH in the 20 PEs? Shut up. I would have lost a huge bet if somebody told me, hey, ENPH up here, hey, ENPH is going to trade down to 20 PE this year. Ha! Shut up. They ain't going to trade at 20 PE this year. You're crazy. You're crazy. Sure enough, ENPH down at 20 PE. Man. And yes, they are going to be decreasing revenue and EPS probably on this next quarter. Yes, I get it. I get it. You look out 5 years, oh, you are going to regret not taking advantage of ENPH at 20 PE over the next 5 years. My opinion. I'm not a financial advisor, guys. I'm not. But ENPH at 20 PE, that's juicy. That is music to my ears. Did this tap 130s? Not quite. We are on the ask at 130, so really just trying to get just one fill on this name. Lose. GM, how about that pump? Yes, sir, baby. That's what we like to see. You know, it ain't much. It ain't much. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Just wait. 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 I'm sitting here on stream. I'm feeling good about myself, but just wait till this puppy takes out these highs. Just wait till GM's trading up here in the 50s. Whoo! Man, I'm gonna be sitting back like, man, why didn't I hammer it? Why didn't I hammer it? Missing that fill by 3 cents. God. Ah. Whew, my bad. My blood's pumping today. Blood is pumping today. Neo, I can't even believe Neo held. Gave out a washout bottom, tested those 1050s. Given that looked like a washout bottom or a flat bottom break, just wait. That flat bottom break's going to come on in. That 1030. I think as it's traded sideways enough right here, it's going to put a red candle right down to it. But I like these highs, these 1020s. I like that gap off of 1032, and even some bodies into those 125s. It looks really good. So Neo is showing some resilience. It does have earnings next week, so keep in mind that earnings is going to be volatile. But if it breaks, where is it? My bad. Where is it at, Neo? If it, let's go back to that daily. I don't know why the top end of that channel isn't in, but this is a tight descending channel right there. You see how that's playing out? That is a tight channel. All it would take on these earnings is a gap up. This 1115 is going to be looked at as a neckline. It could have some resistance at this 1150 gap. But it could even gap up above 1150, and you could see a huge rip. And this could be looked at as a retracement. When you get tight channels like this, I would not be surprised to see a rip up to 14. So this is why Neo, even though we're not on it, it stays in the stocks for today because this tight channel look right here is a pretty decent look in my opinion. Obviously, the move to the downside isn't the greatest, but even with that move to the downside, we are fairly around this middle ground. That middle ground of strength is considerable, and it is negative, but these big players, long and short, are around that middle ground. So same thing how I'm talking about this tight channel could give you a move to the upside. You could actually see a gap down to like 950 below this gap. It could try to get back inside that channel, but you could see an exhaustive move also down to like 830, maybe even the 770 lows down here. So by no means is Neo just set in stone, tight channel to the downside, earnings coming up, you're getting a get. No, no. Would not be surprised to see a gap down into like 950s. So with that information, play it accordingly. GNS, I don't think we got 30s to fill there, but a good candle coming on in. Volume is fairly even, but I like that shade bottom. That shade bottom is a nice look, and the gap up on that candle is actually what I wanted to see. I would like to have seen it just trade down and fill that gap at 122s, but not that fortunate. 30 seconds left. This could still wick on in and try to test those 25. So trying to get 30s. We have not got 30s, but I would guess that 29s are holding on the bid. Nope, nope. We're actually at 27s right now. Yep, 27s right there. But I will say that shade bottom, I like it. It's a healthy green candle. If this next candle even comes into 125s, it's the middle of that green move. I would expect some buyers, and I would expect this 130 to get filled. We'll see though. We'll see. And that is a close of the candle. Nasdaq short, candle number 2 in the works. Is it going to give a stair step? When I see this type of wick and a sideways open starts off red, I would expect this to catch a bid up above 20s and start to leave a wick in the middle of that red move where you will see red candle number 2. It can still wick into this level, which is why I identify it as a stair step, because it's going to try to hold this level and that next candle is going to open, and if it puts that red candle into this previous high, that is your stair step. Boom. So catching a little bit of a bid, I would expect it to push up into this red candle a little bit and then start to wick, maybe leave like an inverse hammer candle. which here it's starting to catch a bid. Somewhere in here, you're going to see some resistance and then potential stair step on the next candle for candle number 3. And, just like this, except for this doesn't catch a bid. You see that stair step right back into those previous highs? Beautiful example on the same chart. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but you can see it starting to wick into that briefly. GNS 130, I see it. There's, do we have a fill? Do we have a fill? We have 35, 40 lots on 30s. Let's go check and see if we got that fill. Yep, ring the register. Finally get to have some positive news for you guys. I would say the GM is positive news, holding 3250s beautifully. Warner Brothers even trying to hold 12s. I'm not saying that in a super positive way. Down 5% on the day. Sucks, but I do think Warner Brothers has a lot of potential, and the lower it gets, the size that we have on it right now, probably just going to show some patience. We can maybe think about it at 1150. It's tough. That's going to be another day where we're going to have to make a decision. But if this does, it would have to show a large wick back up to 1250s for us to really have more confidence in it. But I would say that's unlikely for today. GNS 132. I thought I seen 132s there. Did it print 132s? Not quite. But 132s, we can go on for another 1/15th trim off 132s. Let's do so right now. And keep trimming this name to the upside. So that'll be a 1/15th trim. Let's see if we can get that fill. It doesn't quite tap it. The high is 31s. And I don't like that intraday gap. Technically, this is a bull setup for continuation, but it gives me the feel like if we do get this washout top, it's going to come right back in to those 128. So any trims that we get, we can maybe think about reloading that 127 gap right there, and then respect 125s for another reload. But let's go see what the tape's looking like. We're here at 31s. We're actually at 29s. I lose try. End phase, a beautiful looking candle right there. I would expect buyers in this. If you were somebody that was extremely patient, and even on this knife yesterday you didn't buy any shares and you were just waiting for an entry, I mean, we have it marked already. We can move it up to the wick tops, and then we'll mark these bodies right there. Anybody who has been super, super patient for this name, I would expect them to have some orders here for the retest of these 23 wicks and 23 flat. It looks pretty darn good, if you ask me, for a first fill. A reasonable entry for a first fill on this name. Personal opinion. At first fill, maybe you're sitting at a 0.1% portfolio size, where you're looking at 120s to start averaging in. That is a decent first look on end phase. The first bit of positive that I would say, you could say a few times in here, but this exhaustive move to the downside, now breaking over that flat top, I'd say is a decent look. We haven't looked at nickel in a while. Oh man, given that bear flag look, 3 candles, you'd expect this to start catching a bid. Uh, you know, Underneath 125, you're actually flirting with a bear flag. You can see, each candle doesn't really leave a wick. This one does, so it has a chance off these 125s, but the more I look at NKLA, the more I would say, this could be setting up for a break of this discrediting this sort of channel look right here that we have drawn out. You only have not even 2 points of contact, only 2 points of contact on the upside. I would say I like the GNS move a lot better, obviously, because it's, holding it, but SQ, there's that wick I was talking about. I would expect this to be the wick top of this candle. I'd be shocked if it took out the highs, and if it did, I think it would come right back in. I think it would, and then maybe give that stair step down to 1230s on the next candle is what I would be looking for. But GNS, we aren't going to get that 32 fill, which probably should have been on for 30s, 31s, 32s, 33s, 34s, 35s, all the ways up through this move, and then boom, reload in the middle of this. But actually, I wouldn't be opposed if this just wicked down into 127s real quick, filled that intraday gap, and then maybe caught a bid. We have 9 minutes left on this candle, so we can still get these 32 fills. Forward with the same sort of look, sort of that test of 1150. We're gonna be patient on forward. We're gonna wait for this trend line to come on in. But GM, we weren't gonna be as patient with. I actually like the GM setup a little bit better, even though it's almost identical setups. I do like it a little bit better. Warner Brothers holding 12s, NVAX holding 8s. Let's take a look at NVAX. Testing these lows right here, but setting up that neckline for that 830. If this reclaims 830s, I would be looking at this as maybe a retracement play where that half meets up right at those wick lows. Boom, gives out those lows. Maybe a retest of that. Consolidate down, but we can maybe start thinking about trimming the name again. 875s in front of 9, and then a false break of 9 testing up to those to that 702. But until that happens, I would actually expect it to test this neckline before it does that. Or if it does test that neckline, you can see that 702 is that flat bottom break. A little bit of a false wick right there, but you had a descending channel. That was the open of the day, so people trying to get in on that continuation will then wick, 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 boom, flat bottom break. There's been no retest of it, but I would say that 9 meets up a little bit better for the test of this neckline before it goes. I Yeah, GM, if it comes into the middle of this red move, I would say we'll start with, we were just 3 pennies off from getting some fills at 32s, right in front of 32s, but, I will probably move that order up right around the middle of this green move if it comes back in. That may sound crazy, but I really want this position to start getting built out. If I'm wrong about this trend line, and we get this move down, okay, we can really start getting some size. I mean, you want to talk about putting a line in the sand. We'll switch it to the weekly chart. All kinds of action around this, even a couple direct contact wicks, direct contact resistance. Even on the COVID, it rejects this 30 flat and it tries to break out. And even on that one weekly candle, it just puts a wick back down into it. Hold, 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 hold. If you were drawing a line in the sand, I don't see a better place than this 31 to 30 flat. That's just personal opinion. But then you add the trend line in with it. It just looks so good, but it is weak. The big thing is that it's a weak name. So we're going against the house on this one. But a good start, holding 60s, which, that is the body candle low. Before you know it, this is going to try and test up to this sort of flat bottom break right there. And it even goes a little bit further. Test, flat, kind of discredits it, but gives a move. Back to the original entry. We're just going off of this candle as it's holding this flat. Right here is where we took that first 32.90 fill. We looked like geniuses when it was pushing up, and it's trying to hold, flat bottom break. I would expect resistance in this 32s, where it doesn't need to pull back into the middle of this green move is what I'd be looking for on the GM. But I would expect this level to at least give you sideways consolidation. If it gave up the ghost through 32s, maybe there's something there that I'm just not seeing. But that's where we'll be playing it as support down here in these low 30s. So, we'll be taking a hit short term, but long term, I would not be surprised to see a retest up towards these 40s. I mean, when you're talking about putting $1.90, $1.70, gap EPS $1.40, 225 gap EPS, and then when it was down here on this knife, not as big a EPS, projected 190. I mean, you guys do the math. 5 years of EPS over 150. That pays itself off already in itself. That's $6 EPS a year, 5 years. That puts us right at 30. I mean, I You know, some people say I'm a numbers guy, but I think your average math wizard can do the math on $1.50 EPS for 5 years. Uh, I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. You know, I probably don't. I'm not an expert on GM, but I do know how to do simple math. And that math, you guys want to do the math on Tesla? Tesla's the future. Tesla's a tech company, even though 92% of their sales come from cars. What do I know? No, it don't matter. But Tesla, I mean, last earnings report, you're looking at 77 EPS. Which one do you want to be long on? Huh? I don't know. You know, that probably isn't the fan favorite. GM over Tesla isn't going to be a fan favorite name, but, you know, simple math to me, I think it makes sense. That's just me. Okay, let's focus up. Crack the neck. Take a drink of coffee. Cold coffee, not the greatest. Can we get this 32 fill already? We just claimed 31s. 32s are going through the tape. Did we get a fill? Let's check it out. No fill. No fill on 32s yet. Come on, start chipping some of them away. Chip them away. Come on. Oh, it's few chipped away. Let's see if we got a fill there. Did we get the fill? No fill. No fill. Come on, baby. And there we're through 32s. 32 fill. Boom. Ring the register. Let's go right on the tape right away. I should have been ready for this. Let's go sell another 15th. And let's go right off of 130, 134s. 134s. And we're going to get ready for this washout top. 134s are on the ask right now. Let's go and add another order right off of 135s. Oh, did we get that 34 fill? I seen some of them go through the tape. We did not. We did not, but volume increasing on this second candle. A little bit of selling pressure into those tops. We could have just took those 133s. We would have got it. We would have had it. Large size on the ask. 350 on the ask right here. Let's stop some right at that. Oh, man. Oh, boy. Putting us in a bind. That could be the wick top temporarily. We're going to have to come back down and fill these 127s potentially. 340 lots on these 31s. Open orders for 31s or for 30s. Oh boy, it's gonna come on in here. That was more size than we've seen anywhere on the tape. So really gonna be up for the buyers to come on in for this name. NKLA trying to hold 31s. Given the look like these wicks are gonna need to be a neckline. End phase really catching a bid up to those 120s. Tested up towards those 125s briefly. That wick is a little bit scary. We have 1 minute left on this candle. We have some decent size on the bid here at 128. SQ didn't even need to give the stair step. Like I said, I would be shocked if that wasn't the wick high, and I would have took a gamble that it was gonna give a smaller red candle trying to hold this wick where that next candle you see that stair step. Well, now it's kind of giving the look like, okay, this is pullback candle number 1, pullback candle number 2, pullback candle number 3, pulling into these levels that we have marked. I would have thought more buying pressure off of that, so maybe some hope for the market. Devon catching a nice bid. Ooh, look at that move. That is a nice volume increase. Devon looking very good. Bought some Devon on the live stream before we ended the stream yesterday, or maybe it was right after. But some nice fills on Devon. PayPal holding that 60s. Warner Bros. Holding 12s, Invax holding 8s, GM on an absolute pump, testing those lows already. GM, live buys for you guys. We got 25s, we got 10s, and we were trying to get 02s. We just weren't able to get them. We shouldn't have been as greedy. BAC also catching a nice bid, so a lot of stuff catching a bid off of some false breaks of support. And now this red candle's coming in. Let's cancel this order for 34s. Maybe not. Maybe not yet. Let's see it fill this 27 first, and then we'll think about canceling the order. And I'd say outs underneath 22. Underneath, we'll give it to 20s. But I'd say that makes sense. You could have a descending channel set up here, where you just take those lows. Man, that doesn't look very good. Kind of a wide channel here. Could get discredited very easily. Lose. Come. Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah. A nice hold of 7. It got as low as 701 on Geo. Catching a nice bid. It looks like everything's kind of catching a bid off those whole numbers briefly for right now. Couple catching off the quarters, couple catching them off the half dollar. Neo, I'd say that's a resilient hold of 1050 if I've ever seen one. GNS. Oh boy, are we gonna get spicy? Light volume on this candle, but if this candle increases from this previous candle, this takes out the high, in my opinion. But is it going to be washout top? So we are going to get ready for that 34s to fill, and if we see a green candle, we can maybe go right off at 35s as well. But I don't see that same size here anymore. There was 300 something lots on that before. And maybe it already took it out. If it already took that out, that's quite impressive. I mean, other than that, I mean, we feel we got the entry on GNS. Now it's just about being patient. Uh, I mean, what is it? I mean, 3 people in the chat as I'm looking over. Sorry, I haven't looked over in a while, but nobody's talking. You guys got anything else you want to take a look at? I think we can take a look at some of these other names. We have 600 tickers we're completely ignoring right now, so I do apologize for that. But SPGC was one we thought was discrediting this descending channel. Gives a nice retest of those 250s, so potentially something there. But you can see the descending channel. Maybe starting the build right here. Does it hold on top of 150s? That would be the question I would ask. Some of these other movers, FFIE, a nice stair step. Look at that retest of that flat top. You take that flat top, 3 candle pullbacks. You know, it does get a little bit dicey right here when this volume increases. But you know that's tough to see. But a nice move off of that. Is it going to get some breakout buying over those 20s? Let's see what the daily is looking like here. It looks like a short, honestly, as soon as it tests up towards these previous lows. But definitely day trade worthy as it's wicking into these levels down here. You know, not a half bad look. A firm on a massive pump. We're on Hal's channel. We watched the 1550 break live, and God, we said, "Hey, neckline break on a firm." It wouldn't be so. I think the exact word we use is we wouldn't be surprised to see this pump. I never gave any numbers, but look at this pump. You want to see what a 1550 break looks like? We watched it live. There's that neckline. Good Lord, how about that? Shoom. Hibbit. I frickin' hate Hibbit. We thought for sure this earnings report was going to give some continuation with Dick's Sporting Goods. We said, hey, if it comes anywhere close to those mid-30s again, we're going to try it. We watched it a couple times yesterday. We're like, oh, Dick's is going to pull it down. Well, now Dick's is catching a bid. Man. Oh, man, I really hate myself for not testing the long a single time in this. Oh, man. Disgust me. Let's take a look back at GNS. We are on the ask at 34s, and we're going to be ready for an order right off these 35s. It's really discrediting this channel right now. It still has 9 minutes left to kind of wick back in, but you know, this looks really good. We weren't sure about it with it having 4 pullback candles, but you know, reevaluating it, this volume increase closing flat. We really should have started our 3 candle pullback. So that was a really good teaching moment for us right there. NKLA, we have no ads of NKLA today, but a nice U build. If it can hold 25s, we think that this not a perfect channel set, but early look for a channel could be something there. But we're looking for a retest up to those 150s. We tried the gaps off 126. We're on the bid at 116s. Never filled. Got 2 pennies off. But now up to 33s. NKLA actually not a half bad look. Where you had the volume increase, you have the decreasing volume. It discredits it a little bit with the volume spike here, but it does have a little wick of buying, so tough to tell how much buying pressure came in right there. Oh, my bad, the chat. I'm here for GNS. Charlie, I'm here for GNS too. Let's see it pump. Let's see it pump. We have 6 fills on the name today. First one coming in at 120s. We seen the candle pulled in. We were very fortunate on this 120 fill. It was only there for about 5 seconds. Excuse me. Then we had 122s, 124s, 124s was the last one that we had. And then we got a 126, a 124, and a 122. I really hated myself when it was down here for not trimming it at all. We had no trims on the name, so that was, looking back, that's a little bit of a teaching moment. When you have your first fill at a 120, for a classified day trade and it's up 12%, I should have trimmed the name. I would have been able to reload a lot more aggressively down here on this pullback. But I like the setup here. We've been super patient with this name. But giving the gap up on a day like this, we looked at that 120 as sort of a neckline break. If this really wants to pay, it probably has some sort of downtrend, give or take something like that. So if it can't break the highs of today, it could be setting up now. Now bear with me here, Charlie. I'm not going to go too in depth with this, but when I see 702 retracements like this, so here's your move to the downside. All I did is I'm going to this low, and you can see the candles never close above that 702. When I see that type of rejection, I think of a wave pattern to the downside. So there's your fall, there's your retracement. If this is a wave pattern to the downside, you're going to see it crack below this potentially. And for it to crack that, you're going to have it crack this uptrend. So if this goes south, I wouldn't be surprised to see a large gap down, a breakdown of these lows, and a retest of those lows, where you see it retest back down to your support. So it has the setup for a bear setup. So I'm not going to say that's perfect, but I like it. Trying to get these lower entries. If it discredits this retracement, you're going to see it take out the highs, and you're going to have easy outs at that 170, and your continuation for the move is this 2. Now let's just re-put that 2 back in, and this is the last point I want to make. This is a flat bottom break. Boom. You have no retest up to 2. We're just going to take this bear flag right here, or this bull flag. So the pullback of that bull flag that we're buying, this is what I'm expecting for a test up for an extension. Now, if you get lucky and it takes out this high, you can take the extensions from the wave 1 pattern, where you could see a move up to 450, and I may be losing you there. But so I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna stop talking because there's so many different ways that can be misinterpreted. But that wave pattern setup, anytime I see that 702 rejection, it has to be in the back of your head that it is a possibility. And for it to meet up all the ways back down to your support, I wouldn't be surprised if this goes south to see this testing back at 55s. But all in all, your strength on your daily chart, it is an elevatedly strength name, and I would say your strength middle ground is your house at the casino. That's how I play it. So I would say the odds are in the favor of the house right now for the long. That's how I'm looking at it. Doesn't mean that's going to pan out. The house doesn't always win, but majority of the time, to me, it does win. My bad. My entry's at 1380 on a firm. Clap it up for Edgar. What an entry. Beautiful. Beautiful. Let's go look at that 1380. 1380. Okay, I see you. I see you, Edgar. Clap it up, ring the register for Edgar. I wish I had some alerts I could punch. Holy Buckets, nice. Just trying to respect these lows before the earnings report. Definitely has support there for sure. A nice green candle to identify that 1380, pulls back in. Clap it up. Very well done, Edgar. I'm sure you're having quite a fun day with that 1380 entry. Beautiful. Wow, I really like your analysis. Thanks, Charlie. I would say that it is a mixture of all as many type of investing strategies out there as possible. I try to interpret them in my own way, and I take the positives from what they do, and I try to implement it into my own strategy. Uh, it's not perfect, but it's what works for me. That doesn't mean it's going to work for someone else. So take into consideration that I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy trying to get better every single day, trying to do what I love and do what I'm passionate about. And I am passionate about this and something that I can see myself doing for a very long time. But I do appreciate that compliment. Even though they're doing a share recall next week, I don't even really look at the news in a short-term move. And I know that might sound crazy, Charlie. So bear with me. But all that happens in the short term is it's a big voting machine. There's a book, there's liquidity on the buy, there's liquidity on the sell. If more liquidity is taken off the books for the buy side, the price is gonna go down. If more liquidity is taken off the books for the sell price, the price is gonna go up. So right there at those 130s, more liquidity was taken off the books and it went up to 131. Now the same battle, rinse and repeats. It's about how much liquidity goes off that book. That's what I look at as a short-term move. So if more people are willing to buy, that influxes the more liquidity being bought, the price is going to go up. So I try to find areas where I think more liquidity is going to be bought than sold, and that's as simple as that. Uh, but in terms of short-term news, if you were punched in long and you were looking at this as a long-term investment, of course, the news does matter. Uh, but I try not to let it influence how I trade. Obviously there's good news and there's bad news. There's times when you want to buy the news, times when you want to sell the news, and it's good to be on top of it. But for me, this is a brand new position for me today, and I know nothing about the company. I don't even know what the margins are for the company. But if you gave me a company that I like long term, like Enphase, I know Enphase has 43% margins. They operate at 22%. I know in their last earnings report they guided for their next quarter, and it's not going to be a good quarter more than likely. But they did initiate a share buyback program. Uh, I, I I look at that as a reasonable long-term investment. I can go on and on about the business model of Enphase because this is an investment, not a trade. Where GNS to me is just a trade, and we still aren't able to get these 34s. Um, Still kind of light volume right here. I wouldn't be surprised if this had to pull back into the middle of this green move, just confirm a higher low. But this is setting up the flat top right here. So I'd say building this flat top, you have to move down, build the flat top, set a higher low, and then break it with a nice green engulfing candle. We have a minute left here. This could get going. You know, I would say it gets discredited at this 33. This could really get going, but one thing I am watching here, Charlie, is I get very scared of a washout top. So if this printed up to 138s, there's going to be a lot of people out there that are like, oh, this is great. Oh my gosh, we're going to break out. And then boom, right back in. When I see that washout top, I've seen so many times where that ends up being that wick top for the day. And it comes back in, it maybe sets a higher low temporarily, and then catches a small bid, but then boom, sets up the flat bottom break, and that is the break and high of the day. So I am going to be very careful for a washout top here if it comes in. I'm not saying that's going to come in, but I am going to be selling, over top of this high. So we're on the bid or the ask at 34s. We're going to mark it in the 35s, and we're going to mark it all the ways up to 140. If it shows me a candle close above this high, okay. Then we can breathe. If it comes back in, we can think about reloads. But if it gives that washout top, we might even think about exiting and trying to keep it a green trade. But I have seen this setup give that washout top and come right back in, and it ends up giving out the lows. And I'm really not trying to let this be. We have two fills We have a fill off 130 and 132s. So, at least we've taken some profit. Could have played this a lot better by getting some trims on this initial move to the upside. But all in all, I would say I still like the catalyst for taking out the highs. It just might need to pull back in. We still have this intraday gap here at 127s that we got to worry about. So if it does give that washout top, maybe if I was playing aggressive, I'd just put an order right off that 128 or 127. Fill that intraday gap and maybe one more fill off 125s. As soon as 125s fill, I would probably put a stop in at 120. We'll give it a couple penny downside risk. That is the first fill that we had on the name today as well. So if it gets underneath 120s, it could just give that washout bottom and trade right back up. But I will be out of the name at that point. But if I see we got 4 people watching now, if anybody else has anything else that they want me to take a look at, I'm more than willing to take my eyes off of this for right now and talk about some other stuff. I would say GM getting back over top of that support level, very nice move. GM, we just barely missed our third fill for the day by 3 pennies. 3 pennies. And at the time I said, oh, we'll put it at 32.05. No, we'll throw it at 32.02. And 3 pennies. But we did get 25s. We did get 32.10s. And building that position where our first 2 fills came on 32.90 back on Friday of last week. And Monday we got a 33.02 for my first 2 fills, and getting 2 more fills today was a part of my plan for today. And just because it's up right now doesn't mean that it's going to be up tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday. We're just playing this trend line, and we're playing this as a value play, and we'll see where it goes from there. Ford, kind of an identical chart, but just not beaten down enough where we'll probably be playing it underneath those 1150s, and we still have our original 1132 entry. So if it comes all, and we had trims above 15, we held that last 10% all the ways back in. So someone would be like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm just playing according to this, and I think that this trend line is a very reasonable support level. So we'll be thinking about reloads on Ford as well. It's just GM was a little bit closer. It was just a little bit closer. But let's take a look back at GNS, still holding these 130s right here. 11 minutes left on the candle. It's going to need some time. Mullen, yes, Charles. I will take a look at Mullen for you. I was so close to buying the knife on Mullen. Oh, I was so close. I was so close to buying the knife on Mullen. We had to go in the work a little bit earlier on Wednesday, so that kind of stinks. But it happens. Mullen, I would say your best friend is going to be your strength. So your strength is, let's look at when we had our negative break. Here's our negative break on strength. We'll just mark the day. So where are we at? Here's the day when we get that negative break. Let's zoom into that day. Ah, come on. Boom, right there. Let's look at our negative break. 1, you're giving up a trend line. Boom, you see that trend line? You're trying to hold, so stops potentially going in underneath this 73.60 with the share split equivalent. Now, let's wait for our strength. We'll buy this name again when it gets the positive. We'll just scroll across. No positive break, no positive break, no positive break, no positive break. And here we are all the ways back down underneath the dollar. So had you just played strength and the trend line, you would still not be back in this name. But it would have saved you $78 all the ways to under $1. This is why your strength is your best friend. So that's what I'd say with Mullen. Yes, you could have some buying coming in the middle of this green move. But you're going to have profit takes, and you have a flat bottom break here. So here's your bottom, wick, flat bottom break, now rejecting it. I would not be surprised to see Mullen take out the low again. So take that into consideration. Strength is your friend. That's the analysis we'll go with there. GNS up to 132s. It looks like it wicked up to 33s right there. We can... oh, boy, oh, boy. We've been doing 115 trims on the name. I'm almost tempted to just, there's a lot of size coming in on GNS right now. Oh, it got taken out quick right there. So maybe they just flashed that order. That was 1,000 lots. I would be surprised if all 1,000 lots got taken out right there. So maybe he just flashed an order on the book there. I can't see if it truly went in. But let's see if this gap at 127s can hold. Tapping those 130s again, still 19 lots on 30s, then now 25 lots on 30s. It's been a pretty tight spread. I haven't seen any major size really roll through the tape. I would imagine those 1,000 lots didn't go through the tape right there, but maybe it did. I don't know. I can't say for certain. Let's see some of these other top movers. EVLO, light volume, CR, yeah. Whenever you guys are day trading, you see that second 15-minute candle put something like this, just don't look at it again for like another 2 hours and then look back. I promise, I shouldn't say promise, but I would almost bet uh, more certain that you're going to see the price lower and maybe even try to retrace back to the gap. As what I said, hey, that 15-minute candle, full red engulfing below the low. Just look at it in 2-3 hours, and here we are trying to hold this level. It's going to give a breakdown, and we'll see if the gap fill buyers are here at 125. You know, actually, what I said is I wouldn't be surprised if this took out the low today. And here we are. It looks a little bit. It looks a little bit possible, doesn't it? It looks a little bit more believing. Devin claiming 50s. Nice flat top break today. Pulls back in. Doesn't have the weakness to get down to it. You know, we bought this consolidation period yesterday. We had 25s, 10s, and 49.05s. You can see the two orders right here. We haven't changed it from yesterday. Obviously, we were at work when it did this. You know, if it had opened up and tried to fill the gap, maybe we would have thought about averaging some more shares here in these 48s. But now every single share I have bought on this name is now green. So you could have said, dude, what are you doing? You're holding this $1 out of the money? You bet your bottom I am. There's your catalyst. Oil chart. We can go over the oil chart. Oil looks strong, I think, personally. But Devon has yet to have caught a bid. Nice trend line on Devon. A lot of oil is testing these lows, testing that gap. That doesn't mean Devon's going to get there. But Devon paying off debt, buying back shares, paying a decent dividend, and increasing oil production. Last quarter, that's basing off of their last earnings when oil was beaten down still underneath the 70s in that Q2. What is it going to be like in the big catalyst for oil? And I'm still keeping an eye on GNS and NKLA over here. But here's your weekly chart on oil. There's your pull. Here's pullback number 1, pullback number 2. Each one leaving a nice wick. What's oil going to be like if it wicks into these middle 70s next week on pullback candle number 3? And then on that 4th week, it starts catching a bid. And what happens when it takes out this high? Which you can see the catalyst for a potential channel. Doesn't mean it's going to come all the ways back down here. You know, I would be a buyer. I would be a buyer if it got into the 60s again. But if it discredits this channel, I wouldn't be surprised to see oil turn into a retracement. Where if you take just, I'm marking those wick highs, and what I mean by retracement is those that 94 top right there is your half. So I'd expect some resistance, but if this pull and bull flag is setting up for a test up to that half, you know, before you know it, this could easily be printing up over 100, which is your 702 and your 618. So if these oil companies are putting these types of margins up with oil underneath 70, and they're still buying back shares, and they're still operating at a high efficient level, what type of numbers are these oil companies going to put up if oil gets up into these retracement areas? It's going to be quite the sight to see. And you know, Drift will tell you. I was saying to people, you know, I think people are really going to regret not dipping in the oil down here in these 60s, and they're all focused on these tech names. They're going to regret a year or two from now not dipping into these oil companies that are buying back shares hand over fist. They're paying out solid dividends at decent payout ratios, and they're trading at ridiculous PEs. What type of numbers are they going to put up with oil over 100? It's going to be quite the sight. where on your weekly you have a nice clean positive break for this bull flag, it looks juicy. So oil is going to be a watcher for me next week. Let's go focus back up on GNS. You guys probably don't want to hear about oil. Oil's boring. Nobody wants to hear about oil. It's boring. I'm just kidding, guys. I'm just kidding. Uh, Drift will tell you when I get rambling, I'll ramble. So, if that's something that you guys aren't don't want to hear, then I do apologize. But I really can't control myself, in all honesty. Looking at the Nasdaq short, we do have pullback candle number 3, wicked, almost marked the bottom wick right there. How about that? Now a nice green candle coming in. I would say the Nasdaq short looks pretty darn good. You look at the daily chart. Uh, I mean, all you need to really know is just mark this gap up that it has. Why can't it fill this gap? Why are the buyers holding it above this gap? It gaps up again. It doesn't have the weakness to get down to that level again. And then gap up, continuation play. Pullback candle number 1. This is a red candle, but it closes higher. Pullback candle number 1, 2, 3. Opens the next day at a 1850 flat. Look at that support right there. Just your previous highs before it really got going. Nice green candle, broke the downtrend, wicking into the middle of the green move. I mean, what more do you want to see there? So Nasdaq short, I would say, it looks pretty good. So just keep in mind, just because, some names are probably in the green today, just keep in mind that, that Nasdaq short, it could easily break over top of these highs, which it is some resistance. You do have your previous low here, so potential double top in the 2150s. But if it takes out the highs, I would not be surprised to see a retest of these 28s, which is your flat bottom break. Hold support, tries to hold support, breaks it down, and now it could be setting up for a move. I mean, the market could really give up the ghost. I'm just saying it's something to monitor. If you don't have NASDAQ short or just a NASDAQ on watch a couple times a day, just looking at the NASDAQ, you can see clear trend change where you probably have some sort of downtrend maybe meeting in right there, but that trend change, when you get that negative break, giving a rejection of these, it could set a higher low and discredit everything I'm saying, but it's worth monitoring, all I'm saying. Back to GNS. That's what you guys are here for. My bad. I keep getting off topic. Really setting up this flat top at 32s. Gives the red move down, sets up the flat top. Let's see it. And it got very close to filling that intraday gap. That wick got super close. A little bit of a volume increase to the red side. It shows red, but you have a wick of buying right there. So keep in consideration that, it's a battle that could go either way. I'm not saying that it's a sure thing to the upside. I'm not saying it's a sure thing to the downside. But I do like the setup of setting up the flat top right here. Some people would say, "Hey, double top is in." I would not call that a double top until it discredits this 120 low. So I actually am rooting for people to think this is a double top because I want somebody to hammer this short, hammer the short, and then as soon as it gives that break up higher, that guy has his out probably at 36. You see 36s come in. That's where you could see that washout top. But if it pans out and closes above this high, that's where you can see that continuation move. So really what I'm rooting for is confirm a higher low, hold 125s. If it wants to break out now, great. If it pulls back to 125, let's see those buyers come in the middle of this green move, and then boom, give that flat top break here at these 132s and blast through everything. That's what I want to see. That's what I'm rooting for. Devin, continuing that upside pressure. Look at that move. I would say now that we have a candle close here, I think orders are probably being put in right in front of those 75s for a pullback. Not a half bad look right here, and never really truly gave that move down to the trend line, which is what I like to see. GNS 132s, we're still on the ask at 34s though. We'd like to get that 34 fill. If we do get 34s filled, we're going to try and get 35s, 36s, and 38s. We're going to try and trim this name until we get a candle close above these wick highs. Once we get that candle close above there, we'll pump the brakes a little bit, and we'll go off those whole quarter levels. And we'll probably start with this retracement. So 143 could be one order. Maybe respect 150s. 156, and then we'll be looking for a nice pump up to these 75s and these highs over here. I don't know if that comes in today, but looking at that, if this pans out the way I think, we're going to respect that all the ways up. Uh, so it looks sloppy right now, so I'm just going to clear the chart. Like a clean chart. That's how I like it. You know, a lot of people have a ton of indicators. You know, sometimes I get into that, but all I like is a simple double EMA of a 2134 and my strength. That's all I need. Everything else, we'll set some trend lines if necessary, but this already discredited as a descending channel gets discredited. So now I just want to see a higher low. Buyers coming in the middle of this green move. Decent volume increase. When it takes out this high, I want to see the volume exceed this high. So these volume candles are 230, 290, and 340. When it takes out this high, if that volume is really pumping, I want to see it exceed that high. But you can still see it rejecting this flat top. I would expect it to have to come back in, maybe test these 125s. So we'll see. We're going to take this channel out because that's already discredited. NKLA, kind of the same set of look, but I'd like to see these 125s continue to hold. Not a perfect channel to the upside, so I'm not saying that this is a sure thing. But I can see the catalyst for maybe a test up to these previous highs. Maybe these 150s. We'll think about potential exit of NKLA. It looks like a short, but I don't think it looks like a short until we test up to these 150s. So that's what we're really hoping for. So two different style of trades right here. This is we're just looking for some relief, some shorts to be taking some profits, and we're looking. If I was somebody that wasn't in this and I was gonna pick a position, I would pick a short position off of this 150 and average in as it gets into these lows. And maybe if it were to really get going, you have a flat top gap right here, but I'd look at this as maybe a retracement. You can see that 180 is that first retracement. Now, if I wanted to just take this move when it gives up the ghost, that 180 is also my 702. So potential for it to catch a bid up into that range is possible. So we'll definitely respect in front of 150s. And when it was up here at 140s, I probably should have been trimming the name. But it is what it is. I really like this GNS setup. I think we have. You know, looking at the daily setup, you can see the catalyst for that U-shaped formation right there. It looks pretty. It looks pretty. And still the buyers coming on in and discrediting this flat top a little bit. Is it going to get going right here? Potentially could get going right here. Taps. Let's go see what the tape's looking like. I haven't seen the tape in a while. 27 lots on 31s. So getting very close. Tapping some of those 33s is a good start, but still would have to close above this level. Looking at the top movers, no volume on this name, no volume, no volume. This SPGC, I really like the setup of it, and I know it looks sloppy, but the big picture is that, you know, we had a descending channel marked. It was holding these 25s, broke that and retested a hold of 250. So that was honestly a pretty decent look right there. I know it looks sloppy, but we had a descending channel. You know, it's kind of like that GNS where you break that descending channel, except for this had that stair step. Boom, boom, shorters. There's your washout top, stair step, right into your level, right into that neckline, the original neckline break of the move. But no volume here, no volume. So it's tough to take a trade there. I like the GNS a lot better. Personal opinion. That doesn't mean that it's going to work out. I'm not telling you guys to just go punch in, but I do like this setup. You know, probably if you have the right entry, it's probably worth getting some trims. You know, a market order out of some shares. I only have 2/15ths of my position off, and we're trying to get another 15th off at 34s. We just haven't got that fill, but you know, if this does give a pump up into those upper 30s, we are going to mark it out of some as well. Just in case this wants to be that washout top and come back on in. But looking at some of these other moves, FFIE, penny stock, large volume. The liquidity really isn't that much there, so tough to get a feel for that. We'll scroll through PAGs. Did they report today? PAGs. I was so close to, today would have been a good day for long-term shares in my opinion. I need to go look at that earnings report. I thought they reported. Sometimes those international companies they don't have it set properly when they report. But I was very interested in this sort of neckline right here. Kind of gave up the ghost today, but catching a bid. I think PAGS is a reasonable long, high margin type of company. Uh, but maybe the strength isn't there, so we'll be a little patient with that. C Limited, I've been keeping an eye on. Sometimes this is we tried playing this name on this day. We ended up getting stopped out, and it was a good stop. We have marked this gap at 30.80. So C Limited, we want to see that keep some downward pressure. Where's Path? Path. 1450. We said, hey, it's rejecting the level. If it comes back down in the 1450s, we want to start. I should have an alert on that name. But Path is a beautiful channel. I know you guys are here for probably GNS, but what about Billy? Thank you, Edgar. I have Billy on my watch. I feel like I looked at their earnings report. Let's take a look at Billy. And they were Nope, they weren't profitable. I'm thinking of Bill. Okay, but it is on my watch list for whatever reason. I would say your strength, kind of reclaiming that oversold area, giving out these lows. I would be surprised if we didn't see some downward pressure, but you do have a nice gap fill meeting up at the neckline. So it sets the neckline, sets a higher low. It's a little bit sloppy. Some of these international, I believe this is international. But some of these companies kind of have these sloppy looks. It gives you a nice move. So I would just want to know what your retracement is for this level. See how that gap fill meets up right at that 786? Your 702 was trying to hold. I think you can be a little patient with this. Now, I don't want you to say, oh, he said it's going to get down here, I'm going to wait, and then it catches a bid. But I would say that if I was looking at a long, this kind of gives me the feel of flat bottom break. It gaps down to it, tries to hold, and it never has the strength to really fill this gap either. So if it did get over top of 1535 gap, maybe sells off a little bit, you could say a breakout of 1550 if you didn't want to miss the move. But I would say this gap fill right here, meeting up at that 786, looks a little bit better in my opinion. I hope that was helpful. But by all means, I don't know enough about the company either. But if I was being greedy, I would say wait for that gap fill. Make sure that you see some buying. Let it wick into that area a little bit. If you have to buy it, a couple quarters higher than that gap for it to really start panning out, maybe let it build, let it catch a pop, and then it gives you some levels to kind of trade off of as well. That could be an option. But at the end of the day, I would say it looks a little bit like a short, but I do think there is potential for the long. I can't even remember why I added it to my watch list. But I could just while I'm watching this GNS right here, we'll keep this on watch because this could get going at any given time. Right here, when it's flirting with this flat top, all it would take is pull back into this 127. I want to see that get filled and just wick into it. It was super close right here. I would love to see that 127 just get filled, just to get it out of the way, and then boom, I want to see that nice green candle come on in. If the green candle wants to come on in with this intraday gap being there, it would just make me think that it could be given that washout top. And so it is something that we're going to monitor, and hopefully we see it play out and we can learn from it and move forward from it. Just because it's happened once doesn't mean it's going to happen again. But when I see this intraday gap right here, I've seen it more common give that washout top. So that's what we're going to be watching here. But let's go pull up that Billy. Why did I have this on my watch list? It's got to be something financially because they're not a profitable company. EPS on the year to date is a negative $1.84. They don't really have the highest margins. What do they do? China. So I probably put it on there because I like some of these China names. That's not a popular opinion. service, mobile games, value-added service, audio content, generated video. Yeah, maybe I put it on there because it was trading crazy on a particular day. I don't remember why I put it on there, but I'd say that that original move. Let's go take a look back at Billy real quick. Is I probably put it on the watch list. Let's clear out everything on the chart too. I probably put it on the watch list because it was catching a lot of volume. But now you can see, if I was doing some more technicals, you also probably have a descending channel right here, which adds more credibility to this gap fill, where you're probably bottom end of this channel. So even if you were playing a support level, I would say, 13 to 12. There's a gap not perfectly set, but if you were setting the support level, that's your catalyst for that 786 retracement. GNS wicking into this level, continuing to hold 130s. Are we going to get this breakout? NKLA also getting going, kind of a neckline break. Is that a confirmed higher low? I don't know, but I would say this is probably the area where it's going to set up that flat top break. We said that we were going to get some off up here. We never did. Let's just go take a piece off of NKLA, get a little bit of exposure off of the name. Let's just take off a 10% just because I do think this looks more like a short. We're going to take off 10% there. We probably got 34s, but we'll ring the register on the name. So ring the register on NKLA. We'll see how it goes. GM still holding 3270s, a good look. Devon, absolute pump on Devon right here. So this is kind of what I've been waiting for. Give me a true sign that, hey, this trend line is going to hold. Over top of 51. I wouldn't be surprised to see this have a nice rip at least up to this 53 gap. And if it gets over top of this, the next thing that we have marked on our chart is 56.5, which is your low. Gives it up, retest, retest. So 55 to 56, and then after that you have your gap fill up at 63, and you have another gap here at 65. So that's what we're going to be watching on Devon. End phase finally showing a little bit of life. We had our first averages in on the name yesterday. We were so patient. We said it was under. We had a 166 average built through this range here, and we were so patient on this name, just waiting for strength to finally get close. And we picked the wrong day to start, but we also did have some 122s get filled yesterday. I think it was 122.28. Okay. But I do think this is an undervalued name that we're going to keep on watch, and I do not think the bottom's in. But you can see this is our next level. 120 to 118 is going to be that next level we look for, and after that 112, 109, 106, and probably 100 flat after that. So going to play that accordingly. BAC still trying to hold this trend line, wicking into it. Still a little bit early to tell. GNS, well, let's just keep our focus here. Still a tight spread on GNS here, so not perfect, but whatever you explain, it's cool with me. I don't know crap. Laugh out loud. Well, Charlie, I would say to that is every day is an opportunity to get better, and I would say, you know, you know, I've been doing this for a little over 3 years now. I'm not perfect. But I take every single day as an opportunity to get better. I want to keep developing my craft. I want to keep developing my trading and my investing. Two different things. Trading and investing, two different things. I want to be clear about that. But what I do works for me. It might not work for you, Charles. At the end of the day, it's about getting better for yourself, taking the information that's presented and taking it to your own benefit. You might have some sort of spin-off as you kind of work into doing something. It might not even be on my channel. It might be on someone else's channel. But at the end of the day, it's about taking the information that's presented and finding a way to get better for yourself. So, it's a hard thing to do. It is a very complex, especially when you're talking about short-term trading. It can really grind your gears. It can really press your buttons, right? So at the end of the day, you got to find something that works for you. And it might not be trading. It might not be any of the names that I'm trading, but if I was going to give any sort of advice to a new investor, focus on profitable companies. And once you kind of develop that strategy that you think works for you, then you can dip into some more volatile names, which I would say GNS is probably a volatile name. You know, I don't know enough about the company, but let's just go pull up some of the financials, and I'll give you an idea of what I would think about this company moving forward. If I was thinking about punching long in this company first, you know, it's key to understand what they do, but what are their margins? You know, on their last quarter or the, let's see, go to annual. It's a newer company as well, so keep that into consideration. I guess it's been around for a while. Oh, it's a 15-minute. It's a newer company, so you know sometimes it's tough to kind of figure out uh, how these newer companies are going to trade. But in terms of margins, they have 48% margins from 22, but they operate at negative 230%. So really, I would put that in the bucket of speculation. I try not to let speculation get too much of my portfolio, which is why if it's a speculation name, the better the fundamentals of the company, the longer I'm going to be willing to hold it. Uh, you know, and I kind of am discrediting that saying that I've been holding Nikola since this 150 break. If we look back at Nikola, we got the 150 break, but we only held 10% of it back in, and we hit some reloads on the name just because we made out pretty decent on it, right? Uh, so that also adds into the perspective of how well the position is in the money for me. Also adds into account how long I'm going to be willing to hold it. But Nikola, would I sit here and say, "Oh yeah, I'm long Nikola for the rest of my life"? No, no, because the better the financials of the company, the more staying power they're going to have. If it's a company that's going to be here 20 years from now and it's profitable, the first thought that goes to my mind is it undervalued? What's the value of this company looking like? Is it something that I believe is an undervalued asset? You know, Enphase. I believe Enphase is a very good long-term investment. Just my opinion, of course, but I am down significantly on Enphase. We started at a 166 average, and we just got our average down into the 134s, I believe it's at. Okay, so I'm down $11 a share. But this is where I say Enphase, I look at them as having that staying power, better financials. I'm okay holding this investment against me because I think the financials are more sound. GNS, if GNS was that far out of the money for me, to me that would be crazy for me to think about holding it for a long-term investment. That's just trying to give some color of what I'm looking for. So the better the financials, long story short, the better the financials, the more I'm willing to hold it against me, and the more size I'm also willing to put on the position. Edgar, I am learning every day. I started months ago. Yeah, Edgar. I mean, he just hit on a home run trade here with a firm, and I'm sure he's still holding the piece of a firm because his position size in at 1380, he's probably trimmed some levels on a firm, and he's sitting here probably marking these tops, saying, "Hey, if this gets up to 1950, we're gonna take a piece off. But if it gets over 1950, you know, we have some resistance built up here in the 20s. So let's see how far this can go." Sometimes the momentum and the strength is going to be your best friend. And Edgar, tip my hat to you, brother. That is a great trade that you're in. What's your opinion on CAR? Let me look at this 15-minute on GNS real quick. We do have a pullback candle. Buyers still holding in at the top end of this green move. Let's see if that can get some continuation. Let's take a look at CAR. CAR looks like a knife off of a 15-minute. It does have some support levels here. Is there some sort of trend line that you can play with right here? Maybe. So let's go look at the daily. Strength right around that middle ground. So I would say your big players, short and long, are going to be around this range. If I was looking at playing this support level, I would say hard stop underneath 217.50 would be reasonable. As close to this body candle as you can get it. The closer you get to this wick bottom, your risk reward is a little bit better. This could just give a little slip into that negative ground and reclaim positive. If it does pan out, you're going to have a neckline break over top of 233s. So if you wanted to be patient and buy it at a higher price when you have more conviction, 233 break, and then you can run it up to that gap fill at 240 potentially. Looking at this move, what is your retracement on that wick low? You see, we retrace right in towards that half. So at 200 is really solid support. Another thing that I like about that is right off that gap fill. Look at that direct wick right off that gap. Boom. So you have your half as protection. You can put an out underneath the bull flag. So if you were waiting for 200, you didn't get it, but right around this half, if you were running a stop, I'd say a hard stop at 198, give or take. Well, now that you have this move, I would say you probably have some sort of wedge pattern. You can see the flat top meeting in with your uptrend. So, if you're playing this as a trend line, you could end up getting stopped out if it wicks below that, which is why I'd say a hard stop is at 218, give or take, underneath that wick. But not a half bad look. I like playing new entries, especially when this has been strong. And if you were just holding this for strength, if you had outs up here, so one, understand where your positive break is. Your positive break comes in right here. So here's your gap up. It fills that gap. Look at that gap fill buyers here at 170. Now, as soon as you take out the high, here's your nut up or shut up candle on a positive break. If you were holding this for strength, you're trimming the levels to the upside. Maybe you had some trims. Well, now that comes back in. You could have averaged in off that gap. Your strength on this day is still positive. Your gap fill buyers buys it up. Well, now getting closer to that negative break. So is there going to be a large liquidation of shares down through this level? Maybe. Uh, but I would say anybody who had good profit takes up here and maybe they missed out on this gap, right around this middle ground, they're thinking about reloading some shares, depending on where they got in and where they exited some shares. I'd say that there is definitely worse setups for sure. But right around this middle ground, it's anything goes here. If it ends up being a short, I'd say probably some sort of trend line build right there. Uh, be careful. Underneath 218, I'd say underneath that wick low, you still have a chance for this to end up holding, but that's a part of the trade. It just depends on what type of investment you're looking for, Edgar. If you're looking at punching long because you like the company's financials and you like the valuation, okay, that's one thing. If you're looking at just swing trading it, I'd say your outs, if you're running tight stops, give it the trend line. You can maybe average in if you wanted to run a hard stop. I'd say 218, but that's just my opinion. Charles, you got GNS 89 cents. Hey, that's a dandy of an entry, brother. That is a dandy of an entry. So 89 cents. The open of this candle, I would say your strength is on your side on the day you entered. That's candle number 4. So here's your 1, 2, 3 pullback. Candle number 4. Boom. Shade bottom. And I would say if you're looking for some trims, you are in the money pretty decent right now. If you're still holding 100% of your position, you're doing good on your position. But I would say that it is possible that this could be, here's your wave 1 to the downside. Your wave 2 is that retracement. You see, we get right up to that last retracement, and there is selling pressure off that 150. So I would say reasonable trims as close to 150 as you can get. If you're fortunate enough, now I say trims, I'm not saying exit the position or liquidate the position or anything, but if you're lucky, you can get a high break here. Strength is very elevated, volume starting to pick up. Even on this move, 1, 2, 3. Here's candle number 4. You get a gap up. It doesn't have the weakness to come back down the 112s. That could be a catalyst for at least another 150 test. And if you're lucky, you can get a high break. So that's what I'd say about Charles. GNS is giving a share dividend next week. I would say that's a catalyst to sell personally. I don't think operating at negative 250% is a winning formula to pay out a dividend. I'd rather see them invest that capital back into their business instead of focusing on the dividend. But maybe there's something about the business that I don't know. But I would question the dividend payment for this company just off a first glance to their financials. Just my opinion, Charles. But I wouldn't where your 89-cent entry is at. I would not focus too much on that dividend payment. That's just my opinion, Charles. I don't know if that adds any equation into your and and I'm not saying that after that dividend gets paid that, for all I know the stock shoots up. I don't know. But from where your entry is at, the money that you have made or up right now, currently being up 50 cents, give or take, is far more money than what you're going to get from that dividend, if that helps you out at all. Like I said, just my opinion. But here's pullback candle number 2. I still think that this pulls back into that 127 gap. Looking at some of these names, we have a lot of this watch. Nasdaq short. Uh, Giving up that 34, it can still hold this low, but I'd say you're gonna have some stops on this Nasdaq short, probably underneath that 215, that wick low right there. If this starts coming on in more, which you're getting the increasing volume, we could be seeing a decent level of pressure start coming into this Nasdaq, setting up good for the long, in my opinion. They do the same thing as slash overstock and MMTLP. So they have two. Maybe I'm understanding you wrong. So they have two classes of shares. Is that correct, Charles? You can let me know in the chat there. If they have two classes of shares, based off of the fundamentals I'm seeing, that free cash flow margins of negative 50%, profit margins of negative 320%. One thing that I remember, I'm not saying this is going to happen. Obviously, two different companies. GMBL had two different classes of shares, and they still have two different classes of shares that they pay a dividend to on that other share set. And just because they're paying a dividend doesn't mean that it is a good dividend for that company. When shit starts going south, if they cannot afford that dividend, which the financials I'm looking at right now, GNS is not able to afford that dividend. I'm just gonna be blunt and call it how I see it. That doesn't mean that I'm correct because I don't know much about the company. Uh, but if they have two different classes of shares and you don't have that other class of shares, you are holding the original equity name. I would just say that I would not hold that into account. I would look at that as a red flag. So I don't know if that helps you out or not. And like I said, maybe I don't know enough information about it. But that is my take on that. I would look at that as a big negative. The new shares will be traded on the blockchain. I really appreciate the trade. You trade what you see. Yeah, I mean, I would feel bad about myself if I went on and gave you misleading information on something on, maybe I'm not giving you the best information. So, like I said, I don't know enough about it, but based off of what I'm hearing, our hearing is this company itself, whether they're on blockchain or not, the financials that I'm looking at, I don't see it as a positive. I would look at it as a negative. But like I said, short-term trading can be very confusing. If, like I said, there's a book, there's a buy side, there's a sell side. If more of that liquidity is being bought than sold, and it starts taking out those orders on the sell side, the price will go up. If more is sold than bought, that price is going to go down, and it doesn't matter if it's an undervalued asset or an overvalued asset. That that is how short-term trading works, and a lot of people don't even know that. A lot of people don't understand that. uh, Trading $4 a share on Upstream. Yeah, I'm not even sure what Upstream is. Is that some sort of exchange? I guess I don't really know what that means. Maybe you can teach me something. I don't know what that is. So I can actually move my shares. You can move your 89-cent shares to Upstream and sell them for $4. Is that what I'm hearing? That sounds like Ponzi scheme to me. Nikola trading around those mid 130s. Devin testing up those 50-50s, a nice pump. Well, I would say, Charles, if you're able to pull that off, I would just make sure that everything you're doing is legal. If it's legal, that would be a power play. But that doesn't sound legal to me. And it's not something I'm probably going to go do. I'm just looking for this pump. This is about the pump. Let's see a 133 break. Nice green candle come in. This is a setup. Let's see it wick down to those 127s real quick, and boom. Let's see it. It's setting up. It's setting up, boys. Just give it a couple more candles. This is looking primed. It's priming, setting up, ready to go. Just needs a little bit of pump. Out of my mind. Today is my birthday. Happy birthday, Charles. 55. So I gotta ask, since you're new to trading, what made you get into the investing or the stock market at 55 years old? If I may, if you're not comfortable answering, by no means do you have to. But that's the first thing that went to my mind, so I'm just kind of speaking my mind freely here. You're laughing. Oh man. This is setting up, boys. It may be tough to see, and I'm sure there's people out there that are saying double top. Oh, I'm praying they are. I hope someone hammers the short and they just get clobbered. Happy birthday, Charles. Yes, happy birthday. GM up to those 80s. I mean, you guys seen it here live. When I say I'm going to do something, I mean, we've been talking about this whole sideways consolidation period. We were talking about this for the last week. When I say I'm going to do something, that's what I end up doing. I'm not just blowing smoke for you guys here on the stream. But a very nice wick candle here, and just missing that last fill by 3 pennies really is a kick in the groin. But it is a nice move on the name, and GNS. I still think this 127 fills, but let's see those buyers come on in, and let's see it take out this flat top 132. It has not closed above it. I can almost be certain that there's people that are saying, yep, double top is in. It could potentially give this descending channel look now that we have the information. I would not be surprised if it gives up 125s, it could just wick into these levels, but I wouldn't be surprised if it had to come down to 120 and then catch a bid and just trade sideways and then give the move. It might not even give the move today, but this is setting up like if it pushed and stayed inside this channel towards next week, I think this is a name that is going to catch some continuation. The only thing that would scare me is if this current candle left a large wick and traded back in towards those 120s. That would be a little bit concerning. My friend was day trading, and my bad, I can't see the heart. The heart's in the way. And made 8K in an hour while I was getting a massage, or a message, or a massage. Yeah, I mean there's definitely a lot of money to be made. But one thing that I would say is just because, and I'm not saying any discredit to your buddy or nothing. But one thing is that it is a very difficult thing to do. Majority of people that day trade lose money, believe it or not. The data states it. The data shows it. And it actually, the average of all day traders is below minimum wage. So one thing I'd say to you, Charles, hopefully you've worked a job your entire life and you've got the capital. But one thing I would say is it is a very difficult thing to do. It is not an easy thing to do. And one mistake that people make, and I'm not targeting this towards your friend or not, but just because it works one time doesn't mean that it's going to work again. So I hope that is a lesson that you can interpretate me saying that. Just because you end up doing one thing once doesn't mean that's going to work again. And actually, making money that one time that you do it could be your worst nightmare. Let's say, he made 8K. He could have that same setup come back into play, and he hammers it with even more size than he should. And it doesn't work out for him. He could lose even more money than what he did before. You will not believe me. He went all in on AMC, made unrealized 2.8 million, but I was stupid and never sold. Oh, you had the AMC. Uh, yeah. That I'm sure a lot of people are also in that same boat where there's also a good amount of people that made money. Well, here's this 127. Hold on, I'll get back to that point. 127. Let's see it wick into this intraday gap. Starts a wick towards it. This is pullback candle number 3. I want to see decreasing volume on this candle. Just not quite ready to go yet. But oh man, just wick into 127 already. Wick into the 127s so we can just stop talking about it. Warner Bros. A nice little bid, nice little stair step off those 12s. We said if it got back up to those 25s, we can think about it, but just the way that this NASDAQ short is setting up, I don't want to make any rash decisions. I would say it's setting up the descending channel, uh, sort of like that. So we could see this kind of stair step down and retest these lows, potentially. Looking at it, if it is a retracement, there's your 702. That 702 is deadly, I'm telling you. If you ever get into playing around with retracements, make sure you add that 702 in on that. Because that retracement is the deadliest of all retracements, in my opinion. And it's not even in a fib tool. So, if you guys do play around with fib tools, I don't know if you do, take the time, go into the settings for it. It's very easy. You just go right into these settings, you input a 702, and you check it. So right there, it's unchecked. Now it's checked. I would highly recommend adding that 702 into your retracements. I have 2 shares of HQY. My entry was a 63.34. I like you, Edgar. You trade some of these higher expensive names. They're not popular names. I am all for trading names that are higher price. Uh, because all the price of the shares is you take the market cap divided by the shares outstanding, that gives you a price. So price can be very manipulated, but a lot of people shy away from trading these higher price names, which, at the end of the day, I mean, it don't matter. I mean, if more people are willing to buy it, it's going to go up. But looking at this, where'd you say that entry was? I have 2 shares. It's too bad you don't have more size than that, because this is a nice little flat top. If I was able to add, for some reason something changed with TradingView, so this is the max amount of tickers I can have on my watch list. I can't add any more. But look at this trend line. Man, that's a dandy. You got 63s. Oh yeah, playing that trend line. Gets the gap up, doesn't retrace down to the gap. Yeah, oh, dandy, dandy. It gives a nice pump and in coiling. This is a nice coil. This is setting up like we're gonna go test up to this high right here. Really nice setup, and oh my goodness, look at this. There's your look right there. You could get a break of this. This is something I actually might end up trading right here. I'm glad you brought this up. I gotta keep an eye on GNS still sitting around those 130s. But really, given the look, and even on this move, look at this retracement right down to that 702. Whoo, man, golden entry off of 50 flat right at that 702. Nice trend line built off of that. Yeah, this it really has a beautiful setup. If this, let's just clear everything. Let's re-put that trend line back in. Something like that. If this pulled back in, I might even put some alerts on this name. Right into that 68 and play that 68 level. It's a really good look, Edgar. And I would say you have 2 shares of it. I would hold it until that strength really gives you a confirmed negative break, and I even might go to a weekly chart. Look at that weekly. You're just getting that positive break, setting up that flat top. I wouldn't be surprised to see this really start catching a bid and maybe even push up test towards 100. That's a really good find, and I know you're probably kicking yourself saying that you could have bought some more shares, but really good find there. I would say you're in on a winner. Just hold. Especially with only having 2 shares, even if it pulled back into your 65s, you can probably average some more in right around your entry if it went against you a little bit. It's a really good look right there. That's a good name. I'm gonna write that down on a sticky note. Oops, dropped something I shouldn't have. It's all right, it didn't break. I'm gonna write this name down. That's a because I can't have this on a watch list. I'll add this on my phone watch list though. This is HYQ. I'm actually going to look into this company a little bit more and think about a legitimate position for it. Okay, that's a beautiful setup right there. While we're just waiting for GNS to kind of play out, still hasn't filled 127s. Let's go look at what does this company do? Equity Health. Ooh, man. Look at that revenue growth. Consistent revenue growth. It slowed down in 21, but picked back up in 22. Oh, whoops. What are they? It's health company, technology-enabled service platform, consumer in the United States. I'd like to see a little international presence, but that's fine. 3,200 employees. Spending decisions, pay healthcare bills, compare treatment. Okay. Uh, it also provides mutual fund investment platform. I hate that. I think that is the scummiest part of the earth, but there is money to be made there. I am not a fan of mutual funds whatsoever. But that doesn't mean that the stock isn't good. Let's go to a quarterly. The first 2 quarters of the year, 15 and 18% revenue growth. I'm not surprised that this is catching a bid. A little bit of share dilution, which is all right. They have great margins of 60%, operates at 10% and growing. Goes from 2.5, 5.5, 9.5. Free cash flow margins, very good free cash flow margins. The last 4 quarters of 13, 16, 19. A little bit of a pullback to 9%. But let's go make sure that the debt level isn't too bad. They got 225 million on the books, and I'm keeping an eye over here. I'm not falling asleep on it. But total debt, total long-term debt, cash covers a fourth of it. Let's go take a look at that cash flow. So make sure this cash flow covers it. Cash flow is a little bit weak, about 100 million. So looking at about 8 years of cash flow, so maybe a little bit higher on the debt is what I would not if I had to knock the company a little bit. And there's 127. So let's see if we can get some buying pressure off of this. We finally filled that intraday gap, but given the catalyst of, maybe it is a double top, but I want to see some buying come in holding 125s. Minute 30 left on this candle. Still giving the decreasing volume look. But just looking at some ratios, let's see how they do with their money. Not the greatest return on invested capital. So that is another knock that I'd do with it. And they don't do a good job on their equity. So that's like their share issuances and stuff like that. The last thing that I'm going to check that cash flow and make sure they're not giving out a ton of money in stock-based compensation. But reasonable, about 18 mil a quarter. So a little bit high on, but reasonable. There's definitely worse companies out there. Go look at a Snapchat that's giving out 400 million in stock-based compensation every single quarter. Absolutely disgusting, and they operate at like negative 38%. So yeah, I would say there's positives and negatives about the financials, but still, they manage my HSA account from work. Okay, so is that like your equivalent to like a 401k or something like that, Edgar? Maybe you can, if you're listening, you can let me know about that. But GNS wicking into those 27s, finally got it out of the way. We knew that it was coming. If we got those 34 fills and maybe a washout top, we would have reloaded that 127. And we did have a couple prints over those 130s, so we could have, but we like the way our position's sitting right now, so let's just give it a little bit of time. Let's look around at some of these other names as well. Baba did turn green. Health savings account, tax free. Yep. Yep, there you go. Take advantage of those tax advantage accounts. That is beautiful. Edgar, you're on top of it, man. I'm impressed. Is there stocks that would fit all three categories, as in a day trade, swing trade, or go long just in case? Um, there's a million ways that I can answer that, Charles. At the end of the day, it's up for you to have your conviction. I don't like having that pressure. But if I was gonna say, these names that I have on here are all companies that I own. Uh, Now, GNS is a day trade, and Nikola is kind of a swing trade, and NEO is one we have on watch. But other than that, I would say your long category would be PayPal. Your long swing and day trade would probably be GM. I know I'm probably a little bit biased towards that, but I would say this is a monster level. I would say your long category against strength, so your swing trade actually looks like a short. But I would say Discover Financial is a reasonable long. This is not the bottom, which is what makes it a long. I would say that if it got down into those lower 80s, this is a great long-term look. If you're looking at a swing trade, I think you're closer to this middle ground on BABA. Now there is political risks that are involved with China, but I would say this is a reasonable ascending channel look. You'll know if you're right if you get that 105 break. If it breaks 105, I would be very inclined to say that you could catch a bid up to these 118 gaps. End phase, you're against strength, but you have some reasonable long levels down here. Invex, if you're looking for a swing trade, I would say this one actually passes the test. If you have that the two candle move to the upside on increased volume, and you're on pullback candle number 3. So Invex holding this 8 level could be played around with. But obviously, taking into consideration that the support level is down at 7. That 7 flat is kind of a monster level, and you have your trend line meeting up for Invex. Uh, uh, I mean, aside from that, this is everything that I like. I like the long and BAC. Obviously, strength isn't there yet, but I like the trend line build on BAC here. And I've been punching these 28 halves, and we had a 28-27 fill off the gap fill, and we're on the bid at 28.08. Does it get there? It's tough to say. If I was saying comparing the markets to some I would say oil, your catalyst for oil is your weekly chart. You have this nice green move that breaks this downtrend right here. You're on pullback weekly candle number 2. Next week, if you see oil in around these highs, this is what I'm going to be playing. That doesn't mean that it's going to work. That doesn't mean that it's going to be something that works for you. But I like oil in these mid 70s, and I think you also have strength on your side for your weekly and daily. Your daily is getting close to that middle ground. I like playing that middle ground. Those were the big players, short and long. Keep in mind, short and long. And you probably have a sort of a descending channel building on oil. So this is that area I'm going to be really focused on, meeting in at a neckline break and your previous high. If it caught some more downside pressure, you have the top end of your downtrend that's meeting there as well. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I'm playing it. Just because I'm playing it doesn't mean it's going to work. But I hope that answers your question. GNS, we do have the open of the next candle. We finally got the filled intraday gap of 127 that we've been waiting for the last 2 hours, a little hour and a half. We've been waiting for it. Finally gives it to us. Now sitting up at 130s, a decent look, but still trading in the middle of this channel. So by no means is this a sure thing. It has the flat top here at 133s, so if it breaks over 133s, watch out for that washout top. If that washout top comes in and it trades right back into this channel, just be careful. Just know that could end up being the wick high. But looking at the daily candle for GNS, I would say it has a nice U build. Candle number 4 gives your gap up. You have the increased volume. It doesn't have the weakness to fill 112 gap, 113 gap. Not a half bad look here. I would say Devon getting very close to that 51 break. I'd look at Devon as a neckline break. It's reclaiming your positive strength right here. I would say if you're looking at a swing trade, play this neckline off of Devon. You know that it may be a little bit early for those oil plays. It might need to pull back in. You have a gap fill. I'd say the trend line is a really decent ad, long and swing trade wise. I've been playing it, but we'll see how it pans out. But a decent move on Devon today, 3.5%. Other than that, I'm sure there's definitely more tickers in this watch list that pass the test, but the names I've been focusing on are on this watch list right here. So some are working out, some aren't working out. That's just part of the game sometimes. But focusing on GNS, we are waiting for this to pick a direction. Sitting at 129, it still has that buying pressure off 128s. And I'm being patient with this name. We're still on the ask at 134s, but if 134s print, I would say it looks pretty good. On Coke, I think Coke trades at a bit of a premium. Personally speaking, they have good margins. On the 15-minute candle or 15-minute chart right here, I'd say it has a very strong look, a nice move up. Your pullback candle catches a bid. Is this a washout top? I would just keep in mind that underneath of 40s, it would look like a potential descending channel is probably being made. But I think you have the middle of this green move as backup, and you also have a neckline break. So it gaps up, trades all the ways back in underneath the gap, well, buys back up. The buyers buy it up above that gap fill, which if you look a little bit further to the left, you know, it does have the gap up. So it got very close yesterday. It wasn't able to get there. Well, you had a gap here and a gap here. I'm sure people had this marked as a potential buying window when I go to, and I already can see a trend line that I have set. Is there any legitimacy to this? You know, if this started catching a bid, I'd say this trend line very well could be worthy of taking a swing. I still think if you're looking at it as a long term, I'd say more of a swing trade simply because you also have this dividend that's coming up. That ex dividend date is September 14th, so you're getting in before that dividend. That could be your swing catalyst. If this were to start catching a bid, I'd say your neckline break is the wick high from yesterday, so a price over 61. I would not be surprised to see it maybe test up towards 63. So swing trade definitely in the could be a play here. Uh, you know, I don't have Coke on my watch list, surprisingly, but a pretty decent look right here, Edgar. I think that your hard stop could be put underneath those 60s. It could wick you out, so give it a little bit of cushion. And where I just put that, now that I can see, it does have a gap fill right here. So that could be your last order before you eventually put a stop in. Give it like a little bit of risk underneath of that. So call it, maybe give it that quarter. I would say a decent look right here, though. A very good look. Looking back at GNS. I'm just looking at some of these big movers to the downside here. I know Hal has been keeping an eye on this. This candle was a nice first candle for a move up, but I still think it needs to work out some levels, and the best way to go about it is strength is your friend. Your strength kind of giving a curl, so does it need to confirm a higher low on your commodity before it catches up? I have just around 7 marked, and that's just simply, I just think it's a monster level. You have the true left leg, builds the neckline. You get the right bottom set. You get the extended right leg. This is back in 1987 when we get that extended right leg. One day it's going to backtest the neckline. You would have said, oh, you're never going to get that backtested neckline when it was trading over 30s a couple weeks back. Well, now we're under 10. And it looks a lot more reasonable now, doesn't it? So just sticking true to some, uh, just an old style trading method right here. I call it the back test of the neckline. You know, before you know it, it could be right there. So that is going to be one that we're watching. If it gets down there, we're just going to be patient with this name. Devin rejecting those 50s, so as it's getting closer to those 51s, uh, showing a little bit of wick pressure, but all in all, your strength right around that middle ground. Is this a shortable level right here that needs to get sent back down to the gap up? Potentially, but looking at the 15-minute, it's still a strong move. When we originally broke over top of that 49.80, we simply said, hey, if this wants to pull back, you know, the wick high meeting up towards that 50, I'd look at this as a potential buying window where you could see some orders being put in, and just whether they fill or not, I could see orders being put in from 50 down to 49.75. A decent look there. GNS, we're still keeping this on watch. Is it going to be able to give a move through that? We have 3 minutes left in this candle. I'd like to see a little bit more volume. But now if it takes out this flat top at 133s, 132 give or take, I want to see that volume really exceed these candles here where we're sitting at 115K and 98K. But a decent start. You have 1, 2, 3, each one of those pullback candles leaving a nice wick of buying. And we finally filled 127, so that was what I was really waiting for when we intraday gapped back off of the sixth candle of the day. BAC right around that 28.50 level. I'd say this is, I mean, draw a line in the sand. You see resistance, you see support, you see support, you see a reclaim, you see a tap, you see it give it up, you see it resist it again. Now you're seeing it add as support again. Uh, I mean, draw a line in the sand. I don't see where else you would put it. So we'll see which way that ends up wanting to go. If it gives a break to the downside, we have good till cancel orders off of that 28.08 gap, and we'll go from there. Regardless of what this wants to do, if it wants to catch a bid to the upside, great. If it wants to give up this little trend line that we have set, you know, probably the trend line does have some leeway, just marking it. If we wanted to put it through the wick lows, and just get that tap right there, I'd say you have some room down to 28.25. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm really just waiting to see if this breakout's going to come in for GNS. If it doesn't, you know, we might have to think about exiting. I don't know if I want to hold this name into the close where my entry's at, but if it does give us this breakout, we think we can hold a piece into the close. Other than that, I mean that's the full rundown for you guys. If you guys got anything else you want me to take a look at, I'm more than willing to take my eyes off of GNS for a little bit and break down anything that you guys are interested in. I would say NVAX catching a little bit of a bid. Nice hold of those eights. Eights is the low for the day. That was all we were looking for, is to hold 8. If it gives up 8 before it breaks this neckline, I'd say you have a legitimate neckline break at that 832. Could give you a washout top. If it does do that and then break 8, I'm looking for a retest of the neckline down here at 760. You know, it might have to pull back in a little bit more, leave some wicks, but a nice hold of 8 for right now. It isn't going to give you the move until this neckline. If it's gonna break this neckline, okay, we have some resistance built up here at these 875s. That could be some extension points, but until that happens, I would. It's kind of just right in this middle ground right now, so you're not really sure which way it's gonna go. And the volume will tell you the true picture. And the volume being kind of light right now, I think a lot of people are just waiting to see which direction this wants to go. So volume kind of telling the story of the chart. GM still getting that continuation. We had one pullback candle that kind of was rejecting the previous lows, but now reclaiming 32s or 3280s, which was the high of that initial move. Not a half bad look. I wouldn't be surprised if this closed over 33 today. If it does, great. If it wants to pull back in, we'll look at this green move that it had as an area where we can think about adding some shares. It sucks. We'd be adding a little bit higher than missing 3 pennies from those 3202 orders, but getting at least a couple fills on the name today was in the plan, and I feel we executed it very well today. But other than that, that's all I got for you guys today. I need to get some food before I have to go in. I have uh, a decent day of work that needs to be done, and it's going to be hot. So we'll be watching this GNS, see if we get this breakout. But other than that, I got to get some food in my stomach. So that's going to call it for the live stream today. I appreciate everyone who tuned in, and definitely had a lot more new names than we're used to. But it was good to have you in here again, Edgar. Drift, I'm sure you're out there somewhere. It's good to have you on the stream today, and we'll be back here on Monday. I hope everyone has a good weekend, and that's gonna call it for the day. So we'll see you guys next week.